welcome to our first book conversation series. Today, we are going to start the series with a book by Rudolf Okonkwo, and the book is titled A Kiss That Never Was, Poems of Heartbreak and Almost Love. And our conversation is going to proceed in this way. Next, I will give my take on the book, a kind of a short review of the book. Thereafter, I will invite the author, Okonkwo, to discuss the book. I'm going to discuss the book, the poems with him. Then the third part will be, there will be a panel of writers, poets, and scholars that will join us to discuss the book. And each of those writers will also have a chance to give a short review of the book before we all engage Okonkwo on the merits of the book and anything else. Then the next stage will be the conversation will be opened up to the audience, and the audience will have a chance to ask him questions about the book or to offer their own opinion about the book. And then finally, the author Okonkwo is going to come in and give a closing remark. And this is the procedure or the pattern we'll follow for different books that will come up in subsequent time. So we are inviting you to stay tuned to this channel if you are interested in serious book discussion. Thank you. Now we've come to the portion of the show where I would give my opinion, my take, my review of Rudolf Okonkwo's excellent book, A Kiss That Never Was, Poems of Heartbreak and Almost Love. It was published recently. Rudolf Okonkwo's poems do not lie outside the realm of imagination or the abyss of human creativity. Rather, within their imaginative force, they open up a space from which one may observe the workings of creativity itself. His poems bear the signatures of life, deep reflection, and the emotions of lived experiences. In this way, they lift us from the confines of the particular to the soaring heights of the universal, that which is shared across humanity. Minimalist in orientation, the poems generate their subtle meanings through silences and gaps between words or lines and ideas. It is precisely herein that their creativity resides. Creativity is like the space between words in a sentence. It is the silence between them that makes meaning possible. This silence inhabits all that has been spoken or written, and every new word or sentence emerges from the quiet that follows the full stop. That is the period. Each act of creation wells up from the residue of prior achievement, yet it also longs, almost aches for emptiness, the void, the nothingness, the silence, the margins. These are not absences, but generative grounds. From them arises the something, the excellence of creativity. They mark the place where the artist, the painter, the scholar, the dancer, the musician, the novelist, the poet, the priest, the scientist encounters the prima materia, that is the errors of creation itself. Okonkwo's poems were written between gaps within consciousness in the supposedly ever-flowing stream of consciousness. Are the characters or even the author daydreaming, imagining, or simply recounting history? There is no clear way to answer this question. The scholar responding to the question must be extremely careful, as one wrong turn could lead to the disaster of their thinking faculty. And here I quote from page 55 of the book. Okonkwo writes, "A poet who looks back becomes a madman, whereas a madman who looks forward becomes a poet." End of quote. In some maddening reversal, the last line of a poem is cursed, quote unquote, is cursed, and thus transmogrified into becoming the first line in a poem about this out of this worldly out of this world seduction and lovemaking, as he writes on page 64. All this raises profoundly disturbing question. Is the writer a madman or a poet, or even a mad poet, or the mad poet who is also a lover? Okonkwo seems not to care about how the reader will respond to the question. His interest is limited to inviting the reader to come into the gaps in thought, to think their own thoughts. Later, I will use this technique of thinking and writing in gaps or splits in thought to discern the philosophical kernel of the book. Meanwhile, let us take a moment to ponder the relationship between the lunatic, the lover, and the poet from Shakespeare's perspective. A Midsummer Night's Dream at 5, scene 1 reads, the lunatic, the lover, and the poet are imagination all compact. One sees more devils than vast hell can hold. That is the madman. The lover, all is frantic, sees Helen's beauty in a brow of Egypt. The poet's eyes, in a fine frenzy rolling, dot glance from heaven to earth, from earth to heaven. And as imagination bodies forth, the forms of things unknown, the poet's pen turns them into shapes and gives to airy nothing a local habitation and a name. End of quote. Perhaps there are three kinds of characters in Okonkwo's book: the lunatic, the lover, and the poet actor. The lunatic type sees devil, impious religious leaders, injustice and failures everywhere in Nigeria. There is a lover who looks on his beloved with emerald-colored lenses, seeing extraordinary beauty in ordinary flesh. But the poet type sees the failure of Nigeria against the background of nothingness. From the scene of a nation without significance, he gives shape to things unknown about the country and turns the nothingness of the 1960 independence into ideas and ideals that can propel Nigerians into greatness. In the preceding discourse, I've named and analyzed a gap in consciousness, a gappy thinking as a style of the author. Next, I will identify and analyze 4 other gaps or splits in the book. These are: A, split between treasure and melancholy, tension between cause and retroactive causation, and C, effects of an event that vastly exceed its cause, creating a temporal gap of before and after, and D, split subject, love versus being. Now to the philosophical framing of A Kiss That Never Was. This is a work of instability. Its descendants' lines of interpretation deconstructs meaning and refuses coherence. He does all this to reflect or compel us to re-examine our worlds. It nudges us to even ponder our worlds as if they are quantum fields. The world we live in is uncertain, chaotic, and every moment of engagement with the other is superimposed with multiple possibilities, as if every action opens an infinite array of universes. When an agent focuses on an event or chooses one course of action, the other states of possibilities or universes that were unselected disappear. The beauty of Okonkwo's thought process in this book is that it is perpetually going back and forth between the extant universes and the others that have disappeared or gone beyond our present grasp. At least this is the way I read the book. Let's take, for instance, the introduction in the book. Is it about nostalgia or melancholia? It is not about looking back and missing what should have been. Melancholia is about a lost object for which we cannot stop resistant mourning. And we refuse to integrate the loss of this ideal into our narrative memory and pretend that quote unquote, were healed so that the system can go on as it is. More importantly, the book explores the part of our psyche that does not sense or have lost the ability to know what has been lost, the lover of one's youth. Okonkwo teaches us that even in the depth of melancholia, there is a critical agency. There is power to rechannel it for creative work. Okonkwo demonstrates that a part of melancholia remains that can serve a useful purpose, support the struggle for a better life. The work also inhabits another decentered gap between cause and retroactive causation. Let us examine this statement on page 20. He writes, I've had time to think on this. If you are mine, the one who got away, it follows that I'm not yours. Because if I were yours, you wouldn't have gotten away. Am I wrong? Or did you realize too late that I was the one? And end of quote. Is this a thought that moves from cause to effect or adopts the reverse movement? Is this causation or retroactive causation? The bad outcome of a decision is retroactively inscribed into the time of decision making. In this sense, the emergence of the outcome changes the past itself. You are never truly mine, as if this fact had existed before the temporality of the decision. It did not. It is only inscribed into the visual past. The split is retroactively posited that the cause of the failure is now located in a period before the decision, even though the failure happened after the decision. This brings us to another realm of instability in the postmodern, post-structuralist thought pattern of Okonkwo. Love is an event whose effect seems to exceed its cause. To use Slavoj Zizek's language in his book, Event, the effects of meeting Zebi, the lover that went away, are so powerful that the phrase with which he viewed the world changed. That is the character in the book. Zebi caused a radical break in the character's life world. There is now before and after Zepi. And the book is an attempt to retroactively assign reasons to the evental effect. That is the effect of meeting ZP and also her departure from his life. We now turn to the fourth gap that this work inhabits. The key to this is on page 21, and I quote, says, you know why the heart isn't so smart? Because we are somewhere, we long for where we are not. It is human nature. The drudgery of life realities pales in comparison to the phantom sky-high fantasy. End of quote. Okonkwo here dissenters thought, heart or love, from being. The subject that is infused with love is separated from being. Descartes famously stated, I think, therefore I am. And thus conceptualizing that thinking and being coincides, overlaps. For Okonkwo, this separation of identity of being and thought is mistaken because love often intrudes so forward in between conscious thought and being. The subject is forced to choose between being and thoughts/thinking, and not both at the same time. If the standpoint of Cartesian subjectivity is that being coincides with thought, then in Okonkwo's philosophy, or Okonkwo philosophy takes into account the split subject for whom I'm where I'm not thinking, and I think where I'm not. Here I'm quoting things taught to supplement, to give clarity to Okonkwo's philosophy. I take that again. If the standpoint of Cartesian subjectivity is that being coincides with thought, then Okonkwo's philosophy takes into account the split subject for whom I am where I'm not thinking, and I think where I am not. End of quote. Welcome to the program. I hope that my discussion with our brilliant author and scholar Okonkwo will add textual evidence to the theoretical moves I have named, or demonstrate how specific poems enact Okonkwo's style of thinking in the gaps between words, lines, and ideas. Let the party begin. Let us step into the generative grounds of creativity with our palm wine and our champagne. Welcome to the show. You've had my initial take on the book. I really enjoyed it. I felt it's a rich book, a brilliant book of poetry that is not just entertaining, but forces us to think and gives us philosophical folders to rethink our world. So thank you for writing the book. But let me start by asking you how do you take my assessment of the book, especially about my interpretation of your philosophical outlook, as if you are always struggling, or is it the right word, but you are trying to think in between lines, in between gaps, in between silences, where actually your creativity arises. You always breaking up things and writing that way. Even the first poem about the kiss is like you break off, like it's sometimes it's spiritual poetry, and sometimes you draw a line, you go to something, and you come back. So I want to say, do I capture very well the way your mind works as far as this a book is concerned?
I wish I can say that, or have the power to say that, or the permission to say that. I cannot, because this is a product of Agu, the Igbo spirit of creativity. It's not something I take credit for. I like the way you were able to identify the gaps, because the way it works, the way the process works for me, is that I'm led to write these things, and I don't claim that I have total control of the process. I like that you were able to see the move from the intimate poetry and pointed at the social commentary that was part of it. Most people who have read this book, they get stuck at the first part. They don't get to pay attention to the second part. So you're right in the sense that the writing process is such that when the idea comes to me and I put them down, I try to make sure that anybody reading it, like you did, and other critics who have read it and had their view of that they will be able to go beyond the particular subject matter of the particular poetry, to be able to say that they could see this out of it, which is the purpose. The way I understand poetry is that you can put in your own idea, your own self, your own environment in a particular poetry, and draw from it an experience, an understanding that will make you have a wider view of the world. So yeah, I really appreciate. I was amazed at some of the things you were bringing out from reading it. Some of the things that wasn't my objective. But again, this is Agu that control the whole process. So you did a very good job for Agu, who is the primary person that takes the credit.
Well, Roland Bates once said, "The author is dead." So, but in your case, even if metaphorically the author is dead, Agu is never dead, right?
Of course.
So and again, Agu, the spirit of creativity, we say creativity happens between the silences of two actions or two words or two ideas. So Ago has finished with you. The book is out, there's a silence, and now I'm coming in, and out of that gap between the end of your work and the beginning of mine, kind of a foaming ferment of creativity arises. So it's the same. One is able to see when you have put the period, the last full stop, and then starting, so your end becomes a new beginning for somebody entering it into the into the work, and so it's still the same process of how creativity works. So but yeah, you raised a point about the particular that a good work of art, and I mentioned it in my review. A good work of art reaches the universal by not directly talking about the universal, but by focusing the attention of the reader on the particular. That the particular is described so well that it feels intimate to a reader who is not from that area, and the reader can see the shared humanity, the shared experience, and that is what lifts the reader into the realm of the universal, right? So in this case, there is a poem on page 77 about Ingwa that I want you to read. For me, I went to Aba during that period, and what you put there in the poem resonated well with me. I like the idea, but there's also something about the particular. I mean, the poem is about Aba. It's not about Lagos. It's not about Boston. It's not about New York. It's not about even Owerri, which is close, or even Port Harcourt. But it's so particular about Aba. So one enters the poem and literally sees the decay, the deterioration of morality, and all those things. But as one enters the poem itself becomes a portal to understanding the decay, the corruption, and the vulnerability to death, both death as in D-I-R-T and also death as in D-E-A-T-H of the whole African existence, or at least Nigerian existence. So for me, that's where I read the poem. Because after you've read the poem and you saw it, this was about, but then it hits you that this is Africa, or at least this is Nigeria, because Aba used to be, when I was growing up in the 70s, people were talking about could have been the Dubai of today. People were coming from parts of West Africa to buy industrial city, happy people, and to see Aba went into that field, especially around the early 2010, 2014, around that period. Even now, here that it has turned for the good, at least is better. So I wanted to read that poem, and we can come back to talk more about it.
All right, thank you. Abangwa. Even Chernobyl looks livelier. No, nobody dropped a nuclear bomb there. Just waste of a generation, begotten by a ravaged generation. Not even in Biafra, with bombs dropping from the sky like rain, did those once proud people crawl on their stomachs to lick their own filth. Oh, it is their filth, not anyone's else. It is theirs. Not even T.A. Orji's depraved filth. Did you notice the vultures wouldn't visit? Too deadly for those merchants of death. Yet they raise their children there. They toast our girls here. They guide bitter leaf soup into their mouths, right in front of this mountain of filth. Death is your name, Abba. Death is all who call this place home. You may wear white from head to toe, immaculate and conspicuous, to worship at the church of the Holy Ghost. But I tell you, my brother, I tell you, my sister, Your soul is as filthy as the walls of the anus. Your government has failed, but so have your hands and your brains and the little things that make you human.
Yes, yeah, yes. Thank you. In short, as you read it, like the on the third line, say just waste, right? So you're talking about all the household industrial waste that littered Abba Street, and then I could see the poetic move, just waste, and he said waste of a generation. So that has multiple meaning. Of course, it's a generation of people that are living in Abba, so this is their output. But it also means a generation is wasted in Aba, also wasted by their proximity to field, right? So so it has that one stops and says um, it is loaded with meaning, but then it says begotten by a ravaged generation. Now that again has for me dual meaning, either because those that were in power or the parents of those that in Nigeria, what they call the generation that took power after independence, begotten this one. So is a ravage, or what they were saying, another people call the wasted generation or the cost generation. So it carries that history, that knowledge, if one is aware of Nigeria. But it also immediately says, wait a minute, these are children of the parents, the Igbo parents that were ravaged by war. Right? Because the next thing that calls up Biafra to say, then, so how could the children of those who went through Biafra to maintain their human dignity, their human pride, their independence, condescend to that? And then the irony is being made, or the contrast is made, that the ravaged generation is indeed the generation that suffered the bombs and everything, yet these people did not succumb to the amount of debt that we are seeing. So all of a sudden, one moves from the ravaged generation, not just about Nigeria or a wasted criminal political class, but indeed the parents. So it's as if we're the poet. You are calling them to say, do you know your history? That even in the midst of the war, where people were dying of starvation, your parents still managed to keep hygienic environment, a decent environment. So it plays on history at multiple levels. You can explain it at the political portion. We also go back. You are calling into memory. Of course, again, they come back to the political field again by saying TA urges field, right? And that the thing is so bad that vultures will not even visit, and that life goes on.
Yes, that's
In
the
the midst
most
of this abject
exactly
situation, life, they are getting married, they are eating
bitter leaf soup, and I
their
mean,
bitter leaf soup, and which is very good thing around that area. They eat a lot of bitter leaf ofe nubu.
yeah,
And
exactly.
I
And
take
there
my
should
newly
be respect for ofonubu, that you don't eat ofonubu in such an environment. So things collapse entirely. People.
but what if the yes, you shouldn't eat ofo onubu, but it could be also in a metaphorical sense, they now eat their bitterness. Ofo
Yeah,
onubu is bitter.
yeah.
So they're eating their ofo onubu, they think they're enjoying, but it's the bitterness of the experience that they're eating. So they're eating their filth. Yeah, in a way, because that so ofo onubu is not that bittersweet something again. When it is eaten in such kind of environment, it symbolizes something else.
Yes.
That they're eating their bitterness without even telling you. So that is the kind of contrast that is going on. Then, as I read it, was because the way the book continues the last 3 points on another page, and I said, your government has failed. And I said, that the poet is blaming only the government, that everybody has failed. Then I turned and I found out, yeah, we've all failed. Because, and again, you raised this issue that this idea that when there's a failure in Nigeria and Africa, we tend to only blame the government. But from what you have said, you said, yeah, your government has failed. So are your hands and your brains and all the things that could make you human. So you are saying that they've even lost their humanity and they don't even know it.
Yeah.
Because it's not just their hand. They said all the little things that make you human, creating civilization, creating hygiene, caring for your health, doing things, and you live in that kind of field. But then one realizes, wait a minute, this is not about the poem in its dense particularity is indeed pointing us to the death and vulnerability to death, kind of the necropolitics, the poto environment, as they say, dirty environment of Africa's existence. So I want you to comment on that transition, whether once again, if I'm overreading you by moving from the particular to the
you captured
universal.
it very well. You captured it very well. We always want to blame the government for failures, and the ones we can do, the ones we can change, we tend not to see that. We just accept that this is the way it is. So I had to get to the point of acknowledging, yeah, there are people who were supposed to do this, but what about you? What are you doing? How could you accept this? Your foreparents under difficult situations did not accept this kind of environment. Why did you accept it? And you're living your life as if it's nothing. That your humanity is also in question. It was horrible at that point. Talking about the 2000s, 2014 period, they had series of governors and governments that it appeared as if it was impossible to deal with. But you just saw what happened when you had this new governor come in and cleaned it up, which showed you that it's possible to clean up the bigger mess in Nigeria, in Africa, if people demand, demand that it should be done. It will happen.
Yeah, let me ask you a question. Did you get any pushback from people from that?
I haven't had.
Yeah, pushback to say you are Mr. President, because
no, they wouldn't. They understand.
Yeah, the prayer cuts deep. It's not just that. It causes, because again, why it cuts deep? They didn't just call Ababa. He called Ingwa, and Ingwa is a sub-ethnic group in Abia State.
Yeah,
I know the Ingwa and the Isha Langwa, the Aba Ingwa. So again, why name Aba Ingwa?
Because they own the place. Even if people that came in, I know there are traders from all over the country that do trading there. But the people who are proud, the Abangwa people, they are proud people. They are heroes. Their history is one they should be proud of. For them to see that and do nothing about it because the government failed, it's an indictment of them. You want to move them, you want to push them to say this cannot be us. We can't let this be. So
this takes us nicely to the next poem I want you to read, because we are talking about individuals, no matter how small they are or they think they're not important, taking responsibility into their hand or doing something to address a seemingly bad situation or an outrightly evil situation, right? Individuals taking that effort and saying, I'm going to register my blow, even if it might not go very far, even if it means I'm just talking to the empty wind, but I would rather talk or throw myself against the hurricane, even if it's not going to do anything, just to say that I maintain some agency. And so on page 53, you have a poem, He Died for Me. And that poem, for people who don't know, is about Bruce Mayrock, right? A 20-year Columbia University student who, in the height during the Biafra 1969, went in front of the UN and set himself ablaze to draw world's attention to the killings and the brutality that was taking place in the during the Biafran War, and the killings against the Igbos. So he went. So I wanted to read that poem, and then we can come back and discuss it.
All right, thank you. He died for me. Like so many others, he could have asked, "What concerns me?" But he didn't. A distended abdomen moved him. The bellies of Biafran children swollen with kwashiorkor and our indifference. He climbed down from his Ivy League chair into the valley of the United Nations. He wrote on a large cardboard sign, "You must stop the genocide, please." But nobody listened. Nobody stopped. Nobody paused to hear the cries of Biafra's children. If I had been born months earlier, if I had been weaned from my mother's breast, I could have been one of those children whose pictures shamed the covers of life. He died for me. He didn't have to, but he did. Because nobody listened. And nobody is listening even now.
Yes, thank you for that brilliant reading. It carries the emotions of the poem very well. But it raises a question today for us as Africans, that do we make the effort to put ourselves in the line for projects or for injustice that is not directly against us? This is a white young man. He saw what was happening 6,000 miles away. He could have just stayed in his Ivy League dorm, but he stepped out. So what is the message of this poem beyond the historical memory, bringing what he did into memory? Most people don't know this part of it, even didn't know his name, but he did that. But he also did something again to the way you play between universal and particular. Each particular action reminds us of a certain dimension of the universal behavior of human beings, that injustice against one person is injustice against all. Where do you see that kind of possibility in African politics today?
It's difficult. Our people are not wired that way, the way they say that. The poem, first of all, pays tribute to the contribution of the young man. I happen to live less than 10 minutes from where he was buried, where he grew up, here in New York. But he showed you that certain things will impact people far away more than the people who are close by. There are a lot of Nigerians people who were in Nigeria then, who didn't feel the pain of people, children dying in Biafra. This is someone who was thousands of miles away, felt it to the point that he sacrificed himself to bring attention to this the horror of what was going on in Biafra. So it was a way of paying tribute to him, like I said. That's one. The second one is to bring up the idea that even us who survived, there are people we owe, people who pushed for something to be done. There are still, when I meet some Igbo people who talk about Biafra, I always remind them that you have not said enough thank you to countries that helped, people that brought food, that people ate, that kept some people alive. There were people more people would have been dead. If you're saying 3 million people died, it could have been more than that. if the charities, the people who sacrifice, the people, so there's that part of it. But beyond that, it's also to point out that I could say that the people who fought the war, believing that they are trying to protect themselves, to trying to make sure they survive, that they don't get wiped out based on what was going on in the country at that time. They were heroes. They played their part. But there's this part of us not feeling the pain of other people who are going through terrible things in our time. And it touches me whenever I see people suffering in Gaza, kids being killed, or the one that happened in Iran or anywhere in the world. I feel it because I knew what it was like. I didn't pass through that myself, but I knew what people went through, where I come from. And I don't wonder. I have friends. I would look at around when I was a kid. Where is this guy's father? He died. When did he die? During the war. There were people who didn't know their parents, who didn't know. It was painful. And you can see that in today's Nigeria, what's happening in the northern part of the country, the Boko Haram thing in the northeast. Most of the people in the southern part did not feel it, are not feeling it. They are not in IDP camps. There are people today in IDP camps. There were people in the southeast, in the south, who were in refugee camps then. But the people in the northern part of the country, in Lagos, they were having parties. They were living their lives. Someone in New York here felt the pain to the point that he sacrificed himself to bring attention to that. It's something to be remembered, and to make us ask questions about what are we doing? What are we sacrificing to make this world better, to make our environment better? How do we feel the pain of other people? Do we say these people are different from us and remove ourselves from their sufferings? And these are children. These are people we're going to encounter tomorrow. The children that are born today in IDP camps, those that grew up there, we're going to encounter them. If you're alive 20 years from now, 30 years from now, they will become part of the Nigerian environment. You don't know the trauma they are carrying. There are a lot of kids who grew up in Biafra. They're carrying trauma. It's untreated. It's not even acknowledged. And you have to deal with that. The same thing with the people that have been governing us. There's this idea that the people who governed us, most of the people who saw the war, who played a part in the war, they are traumatized. The generals, be it Buhari, be it Obasanjo, they are not normal human beings anymore. We don't treat trauma in Nigeria. But we dealt with that, the consequences of untreated trauma in these people. So we owe it to ourselves as a people, as whether you consider yourself a black person, a Nigerian, an Igbo, whatever group, or a part of humanity, to care about what's happening to other people, no matter how far away they might be, especially people who are innocent. I'm not talking about people who are going out to fight, children.
Yes, thank you. So our time, it's almost over. So let's move on to another scene, because I wanted to give potential readers kind of the breadth of your work, the different areas that the book opens up. So the next poem I want to read is on page 71. It's called The Wishes of Oshodi. It's my take is, it's a poem that is a commentary on the way our worldview, the way we think, on the way we think, and the way we've not come to terms with our indigenous knowledge system, right? At the same time, the way we promote what is foreign, or sometimes we don't really seem to grapple the difference between fiction and non-fiction, fiction and reality. And I think the beauty of your poem is that it's not you're dealing with fiction and non-fiction or fiction and reality. you are trying to put the reader in the gap between fiction and reality, in the gap between Hollywood and what we think as the old women, the wishes that fly. So you are saying there is a place in the gap between just calling for the death of somebody and versus making money out of it through Superman, or what is theoretically or on the stage believable and what is not believable. What is shown on the screen in the stage versus what is shown in the open bus and marketplace of Oshodi. So in between, you are always going between. There's this binary, but you are not always dealing with the binaries. The poem is always trying to put us in the middle to think about that there are possibilities available in the binary. So it's not whether the woman appearing on the electric pole or something versus the Superman in the future. But what is there in between? And in that, forcing us to not to reject or embrace one against the other, but to say in their point of intersection, in the intersectionality where these two worlds collide, how do we rethink our existence? And I think that's what did this poem, at least one way to read the poem. Of course, the humor of the poem is there, the joke is there, but it's also subtly and delicately telling us a very serious issue about the place of the African society and African knowledge system and our frames of interpretation versus what is happening in the rest of the world. So please read it.
All right, thank you. The Witches of Oshodi. A bird falls from the sky, lands on land, turns into a woman. Mere urban legend. Until the camera phone came to Oshodi. Bill Gates scratches his head. Mark Zuckerberg pulls out a calculator. Oshodi crowd gathers. Lynch the woman! Lynch the witch! They scream. Meanwhile, the world pays billions to watch Superman, high on special effects. Do the same on a movie screen. Oshodi, don't just get a life. Find her a Hollywood agent. Years of looking at high tension wires in old New York City and New York City. I've never seen Spider-Man hanging. Oshodi, go and get the woman an agent, will you?
So, what motivated you to write? Is it a piece of your encounter with the crowd, or what is the source of creativity there?
You know, growing up, you hear about witches flying at night, and you've never seen it. And then suddenly we had cell phones in the hands of Africans. So we now see pictures of those women, and they've shown it to us in Benin City, Ueli, and different places. It's typically between Lagos and Benin City, Edo State, that we see most of those things. And we see these pictures, and people will be trying to wanting to kill them. You know, and I'm thinking, there was one you see on top of a roof, a woman on top of a roof. You see them get into a house, and the homeowner will come out and say, how did you get here? And people will come around and will be screaming at the woman, you know. And I'm thinking, instead of, I know we don't want to study things, we don't want to study the phenomenon, but there's one aspect that we could actually do. This is you have a camera. This is something they have to go in Hollywood and use special effects to capture it for us, and into the world we come. Let me tell you this story. I went home recently, and people were telling me about this juju man who could do wonderful things and make someone, they would stay in my hometown and make somebody in Lagos to die. And I'm like, is that possible? I said, if that man can do that, if you can be sure that man can do that, let me connect
So, and why is the copy of the Quran or the Bible?
Yeah, exactly. Where did they preserve it?
That would be historical.
Where did they preserve it?
People could go to a museum to see it.
Of course.
If it actually happened.
Yeah.
But someone may say all those videos they were showing of the woman. Of course, in this young people will say, "I wish it's not AI," but of course,
that was before AI.
AI, but they say, how do you know it's not manipulation or whatever? This thing, but at least at the minimum, I don't know if our scientists, our anthropologists, our staff go, okay, fine. If this woman is able to give her the benefit of doubt, and let's see, how did she get the power? How did she manipulate nature? And then is what she has done, is it repeatable? If it's repeatable by others, it becomes science, right? So what are the frequencies or part of nature that she's manipulating? But we just dismiss these things as if they are not important. Even the people that hold that kind of knowledge do not even value their knowledge. Let's assuming that what we see on TV or what we see with those camera shots are true. But my point is this, right? Like when he said somebody said in your village they could kill this. Why is it that those village witches and witches have not been able to kill governors and presidents of Nigeria that always hold their captive, right? Why do you have to go to the street and protest if they have such powers? Why are we waiting?
Exactly.
We don't need the CIA first. Let that man do something about take out bad leaders. Why has that not happened? Or are those people in the villages with supernatural power in cahoot with the political leaders who has given them a little bit of sugar to taste?
Exactly. That's the assumption that they get something from those people. But I'm saying if they are making it a business now, they have that kind of power, they can make somebody far away from them without touching the person have cancer. Okay, let's see. Let's try out. Let's see. Let's test.
Yeah, and can those people also travel without visa?
Oh yeah.
Of course, without Pentecostal pastors that say
pastors are the ones who are doing that one. They are the ones that
travel without visa. But I don't know if our rural people can.
Yeah, they don't have any need to go abroad yet. But these are efforts to make people think beyond this close way of looking at things. What is actually possible? Do we embrace empirical proof at this time, at this age, or do we continue with what so far is superstitious beliefs? What do we do? How do we transform our society? How do we look at what's happening around the world and see how we reform what we're doing? I'm not dismissing what the African science, the African traditional science, what it is, but we have to investigate that. I asked a doctor recently, who is a Nigerian doctor, I said, what were we doing with people who had diabetes before the Europeans came? How were they being treated? Type 1, type 2? What did we do? Did we abandon it? Could we reform it? Could we find out? Could we reform it? Maybe there is something that the world will benefit from us. We treated malaria before the Europeans came, before they brought chloroquine and all the medicines they brought. How did we do that? Why is it that we are not exploring those things? So this is just like what the poem is saying. There's a way to rethink. Instead of following the same trend, the same thing that our foreparents did many years ago, we could challenge ourselves.
Yeah, so that's why at the beginning I said the work in this poem, in this collection of poem, that anywhere you go you're always putting the reader in some kind of an in-between space. Now here, in the last poem that you read, you have the traditional knowledge system and you have the Western imported knowledge system. And you are saying, I'm not saying reject the traditional way or embrace the Western way to the detriment of your inheritance. But you're saying in between where they meet, how can we rethink their intersection so that they benefit us? They generate the kind of knowledge that will make our society to flourish, rather than a knee-jerk reaction of going to one of the sides. So you are always putting people in that gap. So where Africa supposedly ends and where the West starts, in between, there is room, there is a space of creativity itself.
Mm-hmm.
And that is what this new generation of Africans, those of us that are alive today and the ones younger than us and the ones that to come, had to think through that space rather than saying there are closed boundaries. There are borders that one cannot cross, but they've intersected, and we need to stay in that gap to rethink where we are. So at least we've come to the end of the first segment of our conversation, and the next part is that we'll bring in two other scholars, poets, or writers to continue the conversation. Each one of them will make an opening speech about 5 minutes, and then they will engage with our author, Rudolf Okonkwo, and I will gladly play the role of a facilitator. So thank you for watching so far. Stay connected, stay tuned.
Thank you. Thank you so much for a wonderful job. I appreciate you, and I appreciate the fact that you were the only person that read the book and gave me your feedback.
Okay, so Dr. Rudolf Okonkwo, are you there?
All right. that was wonderful. Thank you so much for doing this, and I think the structure is wonderful, and we will hope to have more conversations like this with other authors.
Okay. So now we go to the next segment, and we are going to have. We are fortunate. We had previously said two, but we have a third one in. So two are going to be live with us, and one sent in his report. So the first person who is going to be live with us is Okey Ndibe. I'll introduce Okey Ndibe, and I'll introduce the others at the same time so that they will just come in. Okey Ndibe, who is the first person who is going to also offer a short review of the poetry book and also interact with our author Rudolf Okonkwo. Is the author of two widely acclaimed novels, Arrows of Rain and Foreign Gods Inc. Professor Ndibe is not just a novelist, but a master craftsman of prose. He's a writer's writer. Ndibe is one of the best writers of English prose alive today. His prose is a pure means of jouissance. Okey's craftsmanship offers a beatific vision of prose heaven. That is the way I chose to introduce Okey. As they say in Nigeria, if you don't like it, you can go to court. but that is real. I want people to. Okey, it's not just a novelist because these days everybody's a novelist. Some of us like myself and Rudolf Okonkwo are also pretending to be novelists or writers. But Okey is actually a master craftsman of poet or prose, and I wanted to make that distinction that it's a pure means of enjoyment reading his poetry, and you have a beatific vision of what prose heaven will be. So, but after Okey, we are going to have Dr. Kinde Roland Akiola is a Nigerian writer and literary critic. Is widely read and known in Anglophone Africa for his strong opinions on literature and policies, which have won him many admirers and made him very controversial. He is the winner of the 2022 James Corey Society of Lifetime Achievement Award for Literary Criticism at Oxford University. So he is also going to come on the panel, and then the third person is going to be Dr. Tonia Okonta. Is an alumnus of University of Ibadan College of Education, University of Ibadan, and also College of Education, Abraka Delta State, all in Nigeria. He holds a certificate in management, a contemporary marketing management and safety. He's a Fire Department of New York Certified Safety Director, among other certification. He's married with children. I look forward to eavesdrop and also as a facilitator of this conversation. So what I had with Rudolf Okonkwo is just supposed to be the appetizer. Now with Okey there, we are going into the main menu, and with Ikhide and Okonta, you are really going to have a good, well-balanced diet. So now I would turn to Professor Okey Ndibe to give us his opening remarks about the book. He's going to do that, and then he would also have questions for Rudolf Okonkwo so that there is some kind of interaction. And if I need to intervene to ask Okey question, I would do, or to ask Rudolf. The whole point is to, when they speak the big grammar and big English, my duty is to bring it down so that the audience can follow. Okay, over to you, Dr. Okey Ndibe. Mute. Yeah, okay.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Wow. So Nimi, when you were introducing me, or when you were proposing to introduce me, I actually was looking around the room to see if there was somebody I could recognize that you were introducing, but I couldn't find any such person. So you're very, very kind. And I just want the audience to know that Nimi and I have been friends for decades now, even though we're both very young. so we've been friends for years, and so when you hear that kind of introduction, it's actually the grace of long friendship speaking rather than the reality of one's achievement, which are quite modest as a prose writer. What I have to say actually is that Rudolf has, in many ways, annoyed me with this book of poetry. And I say this because Rudolf is somebody for several reasons. One is that I've always felt that the most visceral art form, the idiom, is music. And I think that in contemporary literary idioms, that poetry is a thing that comes closest to music. And so my fantasy growing up was to be a musician in the tradition of Fela Nicola Mokuti. Unfortunately, I didn't have the talent, and only recently did I brave it into becoming a member of the choir in my church. And Rudolf, has made fun of me in that regard. Things that God is very forgiving to let somebody as untalented as I to sing in a choir. So it's a way of saying that my fantasy was to be a singer. Failing to do that, I then wanted at least to be a poet. I, in the end, settled for the art form of prose, and I've been mediocre at best, a middling talent, if you like. So Rudolf is somebody whose prose I have a healthy respect for. And then this guy just jumps into poetry. And so I want to announce to the world that I hate you, in a very profound way, and I'm not joking. But when Rudolf sent me this poem, this book of poetry, and it bears reading the way he marked the book. He said, "For Okey Ndibe, you now own a signed copy. Don't let my grandchild see it in a thrift store. Thank you for your years of friendship. Onward, Rudolf." It wasn't a simple autograph. As you can see, this was somebody who is a sworn enemy, ensuring that I will not earn my living the way I've been doing it, which is by sending books out on eBay, signed books especially. So for somebody to send me this book of poetry that is already annoyed the heck out of me, because this is something that I had almost an illicit joy reading, and then to obviate my ability to make some money out of this book is unfriendly. It's an enemy action. But Nimi, by the way, I like to say that having listened to your analysis of the poem and then your conversation with Rudolf, I sort of felt that my task had become almost an unnecessary one. There is a compendium to your analysis of the poem. Some of the poems that you've asked Rudolf to read are those that I would have invited him to read as well. Some of the questions that you have posed are those that I would have wanted to invite him to also read. But so I'm going to make just a few quick remarks and ask one or two questions. Rudolf actually knows that in America, you have to file your taxes. I think somebody told me that Tinubu is trying to institute the same tradition in Nigeria, which, for what it is, it's interesting. So today, actually, I have to do my taxes. So I have to answer to Uncle Sam, and somehow the appointment that I have with our taxman, that my wife and I have, sort of conflicts a bit with the time that we have for this conversation. So I apologize about the brevity both of my contribution and ultimately of my presence here. But Rudolf and Nimi, I'd like to again express my gratitude to both of you for initiating this conversation. Nigerians have this wry saying where they say, in a book we go chop. And I tell people that if we take ourselves seriously, if we want to be producers rather than consumers of knowledge, then yes, we have to chop books. Okay. Some people think that there are too many opinions in the world, there are too many stories in the world, there are too many poems in the world. On the contrary, there are not enough good poems, there are not enough good stories, there are not enough people who are good at these things, at doing analysis, political analysis. And I think that the wonder, part of the power of what Rudolf does, is how, especially in the first section of this book, which announces itself as a kind of a lament. You know, there is a poem of lamentation for a love that got away. It's a poem of lamentation for a love that could have established a particular trajectory if this kiss had happened. And reading it, one reads it with awe and with wonder. Because this is, first of all, is that Rudolf and I have been friends for years as well. So I sort of know the history out of which this poem and this book emerge. And I'd like to say that this is a very brave book and also a dangerous book in so many ways, right? Rudolf and I know that I have a separate book report to make to his wife. So when I make it, the dangerous part of it will come out. So that's for Rudolph's wife. Okay, so I'm not going to do a public accounting for this dangerous book of poetry that Rudolf has written. But there's a sense of crushing innocence in this book, especially in the first section, right? It has both the sense of a coming of age exploration of the most essential question, the question of desire, the question of love, the question of the ways in which the ideals of love can lead to maddening consequences. In this case, a consequence of failure, where the poet reflects on what might have been had this kiss happened. And so one of the things that struck me is just the amplitude of mythic and literary as well as cultural references that we encounter in Rudolph's work. So the very opening of the poem, the first section of the poem, evokes and invokes Walt Whitman, Langston Hughes, and as you read the other parts of the poem, you encounter sort of oblique references to Okigbo, to Tricia Nwobani, to Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie, to Christopher Okigbo, to Lionel Richie, to Ngugi wa Thiong'o, to Ifeoma Madiume, to Bob Marley. I was talking to Rudolf recently about a line in one of the poems where it says that we need money to advertise our poverty. That particular line for me is worth the price of the ticket, because it speaks to sort of the central tension, I think, within our culture, and I'm referring particularly to Nigerian culture, but even so to American culture as well, where this impulse to acquire and to acquire materialist goods for the sake of them. And to one degree or another, all of us are implicated in this pursuit, right? Sometimes it takes ineffable um, um, versions, right? Where we pursue fame, So some of us want to be known as the greatest musician. Some of us want to be known as the greatest soccer players, the greatest dancers, musicians, and so on and so forth. But clearly, there's this compulsion, this compulsion to acquire material riches, right? And so when Rudolf writes in a kind of dialogic with a poet, right? The poet put things we are scum because we want to accumulate things. And Rudolph's line, very wry, very fiercely, it's a line that has fierce eloquence to it, that we acquire money to advertise our poverty. So that reminds me of a moment where I think it was Bob Marley who was asked about his material worth. And Bob Marley said that some people are so poor that all they have is money. So some people are so poor and all they have is money. On page 41 of the poem, we see Udol, Udol, emerge as the poet's persona in this collection of poetry, especially in the first section. As I said, Rudolf has, shared the story that undergird this poem of innocence. That is also a poem that engages in a dialogic of moral maturity. So Rudolf wrestles with so many different questions in this. There is also something that I find fascinating about this poem, which is something that I know, again, about Rudolf, that in a lot of ways, Rudolf is both a man of the present time as well as a man in the dim, vanished time. Anybody who knows Rudolf knows that for years, I don't know, Rudolf, if you still do it, Rudolf kept a daily diary. Okay? Kept a daily diary. That is the kind of thing that for young people who have grown up in the last 30, even 40 years, will seem so archaic and so outmoded. But there was a time when so many people, including my father, engaged in daily diary writing. So there's a moment in the book where I'm going to find it, where they hold on, where okay, anyway, where the object ZP, the object of this desire, says that she's afraid of talking. I have to hang up the phone because I'm afraid of talking. And the persona in the poem says, my own fear is that of writing too much. So so it's one of those moments where I recognize the poet or the Agwo standing Rudolf or Udolf or Udol in the poem. So Rudolf removes his first name and then removes the first letter, of his first name and the last letter to create this persona, Udol. One of the questions that I have, Rudolf, in reading your book is, I'll refer to pages 45 and 59. So on page 45, you write, I'll let you in on a little secret. I've got something the world will give anything for. I've got hope. So I want to underline hope. On page 59, you write, I find hope and with hope I have everything. Adieu, my teacher. So this is a rather excellent elegiac poem, an elegy for Ola Rotimi. And I know that Rudolf has been a fan of Ola Rotimi's work. So the question that I have for you, Rudolf, is that part of the poems, there's a current, an undercurrent that runs through your poem. And it's an undercurrent of a world of pathology. It's a very pathological universe that you create, even though within that pathological darkness, we see sort of little flickers of light. And so I know that years ago, somebody in an interview had asked me, why did I continue to write about Nigeria? This was the 2 decades or something when I wrote a weekly column on Nigeria. And somebody said to me, Nigeria is a wasted project. So why do you spend so much time meditating on this country, worrying its problems in your column week after week? And I said to this person that I had hope in Nigeria. And but I said I was not optimistic. So hope becomes a sentiment. Okay, hope is like faith, so I have faith in God. If somebody said to me, reduce God to mathematical proof, I'll say, you've got me there, but I have a stubborn faith. So in the same way, I have this stubborn hope in the possibility of reclaiming the Nigerian project, in the possibility of us finding a different trajectory for our nation and ultimately for our lives as Nigerians, say, or as Africans or as Americans. So, but then hope is not the same as optimism. Optimism is more objective. You have to point to certain things and say, on account of these factors, I'm optimistic. It seems to me that when you say, I have hope, that hope is simply a choice you've made. You've refused to surrender, as it were, to despair. So my question to you then is, when you speak about hope, how do you see the hope that you enunciate in this collection of poetry, as opposed to the swarming pathology that we see in the body politic that we call Nigeria? Okay, so the other thing is a more sort of technical question. To say to you, I know that you've sort of ascribed the muse to Agwo, right? But then Agwo was using you as his instrumentality, okay? So in the composition of the poems themselves, what kind of negotiations did you find yourself engaging in? There's a shaping that happens, especially in an art form like poetry. There's a shaping of the lines. There is a choice of words. There are all kinds of built-in layers of meaning. Nimi talked about the silences. I recall the protagonist, a major character, a character I like in my first novel, who says to her grandson, a story that must be told, never forgive silence. And I remember that Professor Wariboko invited me to Boston University to give a talk. And he gave a very fascinating intervention on this question of silence. Okay, so that we need silence in order to actually derive meaning. So silence can be strategic. So what are some of those considerations that you, as the tool that Agwo was using, had to employ in order to bring up or to bring to bear this body of poems, right? That are inspired by Agwo. I don't know if my question is clear, and if it isn't, it's strategically unclear.
Thank you so much. Okay.
So I know that Ikhide, my baby younger brother, will come in at some point, and I know that you have other fascinating people who will respond. But I have so many. I made so many notes, and even marked up the book so much, but I want to keep it sort of
And also, I know that you have to go. So thank you so much. Okay. When Nimi was introducing you, he said something, and that is very key. It's not even about your pros and all those the ones. The most important thing about okay, and you can't say this about most writers, is that you said he's a writer's writer. There are so many writers who don't care about other writers. Okay cares about other writers. I'm not saying this because you're here, but it's important that people know there are writers who basically it's all about them and they don't. Anyway, so that's by the way. About hope, and I used to say that the ideals of Nigeria, they've not been tried and found wanting. They've been found difficult and left untried. And that's the way I look at most things in life. My wife would say that I'm an eternal optimist. I believe that anybody can do anything if they apply themselves. I do believe that in every situation, if you are failing, if you fail, you try again. If you keep failing, you have to change something. There's something that you haven't done. So that has been my principle, and I apply it to every situation. That there's a way, or they say there's always a way. You can find a way. You can push. You may not get to the top, but you get to a place that is above average if you apply yourself in most cases. So that's the where the hope is coming from. It's not renewed hope for those. It's on the comment section. It's not renewed hope. It was I had that before renewed hope. For instance, you're talking about the first part of this book where the most poems there were written over 30 years ago. So they are not recent works. But the second part, you find poems about Buhari, about Abba. Those are more recent ideas. But you can say in general, I have always thought that the way I look at it is longing. People are longing they are looking for something. They have dream, and that metaphor, the case, it can actually transfer to all the other stories in the poetry. So when you talk about something like Biafra, there are people who were longing. They wanted this Biafra, and they didn't get it. Just like a kiss, it would have been a kiss for them, and it's still something that haunts them. So that's the connecting thing, a thread in the whole work. So that's how I say. The second part you were talking about. What was the second question?
You've forgotten?
You made it obscure. What was it again?
Well, Nimi, explain it to him.
He said about your relationship with Agu.
Me and Agu. Oh, yeah. That's my friend, my best friend. So negotiation. You were saying what were the negotiation with Agu? So this site is, like there's a poem that I think nobody mentioned that, and I'm happy somehow that people didn't mention it, which was Buhari, your prick is too small.
Yes.
Yeah. So it's Agu. I couldn't have written something like that. And who am I to challenge what Agu is telling me to put down? It was at the heat of the Lekki massacre, and I threw away all sanity. Me, Agu took over and said, look, you have to tell him how you feel. So there's that part. This book was not heavily edited like most works, and you can see it there. There are. It's not level. It's not like polished the way most things published today, because I wanted it to be presented the way it felt, the way it came, to a large extent, the way it came. And I'm very close to Agu. We agree, we understand each other, and when it takes control, I have no fear. It's not really me, I wouldn't do that when I'm in my normal state. I wouldn't say certain things I said there, certain words I used in the poem. I don't think I could have done that if not that I handed over myself to Agu and say, use me any way you want. It's me. So that's it.
There is if I may step in again.
Yeah.
If we go to page I think page 20, is it 27? Let's see if it is 27. Actually, page 23.
Okay.
The bottom of that page.
Yeah.
There's a quality in your poetry which this sort of exemplifies, right? Which is the deftness of your movement between different gravities, what I call gravities in the poem, right? So the 4 lines from the bottom, when ZP emerges, and you write, that woke up an earthquake buried inside me. Okay, so we have this this geological, tectonic, chaotic response to this young woman emerging at the airport. Then, so you go from this upheaval, this tectonic upheaval, to then you bring the language down several notches. I was never the same. So from earthquake to I was never the same. Then you go to she was an apple-faced girl, fresh like the African morning. So it's a brilliant move where you, as it were, amplify things to the highest, to the level of an earthquake. Then you quickly bring the reader down, to apple-faced girl, fresh like the African morning. So it's actually a brilliant move because a less deft poet might have stayed at that level of the earthquake, and then the reader will begin to resist this and say, there is not a girl who will come and provoke this kind of reaction. So it's a quick quality there. And then there is a moment in the also in the poem, let me see if I can find it quickly, where you sort of engage in the persona in the poem is able to laugh at his own self. Let me see if I can find it, because I think that's another quality in your poem that is really, really brilliant. Okay, let's actually go to page 27. The middle section. We danced once, ZP and I. We danced like 2 leaves caught in a whirlwind. Okay, so that for me already foreshadows what's going to happen in the last section. We danced like 2 leaves caught in a whirlwind. When there's a whirlwind and 2 leaves are caught, it's a very tenuous thing, because the whirlwind could actually separate the leaves, right? It's brought them together, but it's usually very temporary and they part. So when you get to the bottom, then you say, yesterday I went to the African Center days after she'd gone. I searched for her shadow and the scent she left behind. I spoke to the walls, invoking her presence, her perfect swinging body, luring dancing feet, and charming, smiling face failed to appear. I bent down on the dancing floor, looking for her footsteps, in futility, of course. So already I'm saying that first line, that line where you talk about leaves caught in a whirlwind, already prepares me as the reader to anticipate what happens, the fact that she's gone and he doesn't have her. But there's a moment where, yes, on page 28, good, where the poet actually, as it were, laughs, invites us and laughs also at himself. You say, I'm not in control of what I've become. I want to care again. I want to give a damn. I want to dream and be sane. I want something to get my nerves calm. For anything other than this pain, I'm ready to give an arm. I picked up my slim arm and wondered, who would want it? So that's actually, knowing you and knowing how skinny you are, in a world of pumped muscles, hollow brains. Wow. So both making fun of yourself, but also making fun of these muscle-bound honchos, hollow brains and fleeting focus, who will perch on a timeless Iroko tree. I don't want to hurt myself, I said. I don't want to hurt anyone. So that's, so these are some very deft movements in your poem where you're able to shift. And as you shift, of course, the reader is shifting both in space, but also emotionally within the poem. So there are moments in the poem that make you hold your breath in horror, and then the next moment you could just explode in laughter. So the kind of poem that evokes, that provokes that kind of variety of responses is really an accomplishment. So I want to tell everybody who is watching to go get this book. It's really a treasure.
Thank you. Okay. Thank you so much. Nimi, you're muted.
That is a good spot for us to stop. Okay, as engage us for 30 minutes exactly, precisely about that. He forgot I was supposed to leave. Okay, and I do want to remind him about his tax. Anyway, so okay, if you want to, we have you have to. Uncle Sam is more important.
Yes. I have another 10 minutes, so I'll wait and hear.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
So, but before he responds to a question in the next 10 minutes, I want you to, because things came up. I have 3 other comments that so he can respond after that to wrap up this section. Because Agu keep coming up, and this may be like a frivolous question of infelicitous or so. What language does Agu speak? Because the language you speak in the poetry is English.
Yes.
So that means Agu is speaking to you.
Yes.
Does Agu speak English, or there's a translation? And
there's
therefore,
translation.
What is lost in translation?
Yes.
With Agu? That is another one. And he said the first part of the poem were written 30 years ago. Why do you have to wait this long? I mean, that's what at least you need to tell us why you have to wait this long. And then finally, from what Okey was saying and your response about this issue of hunt, right? What Derrida would call ontology. It reminds me there's a big part of South Korean literature, both philosophy, literary work, and theology that deals with Han. They call it Han. So you have HAN, as you have the doctoral students who is writing a dissertation on Han, HAN, and Derrida ontology. And haunt is an unresolved grief. On something that is ongoing, because you link the issue of the kiss that never was, both as a romantic story and also as a general Biafran story, and generally all the things that we miss and we hope to get, but we have not gotten. And so there's a sense of it. And in Korea, it's a big Korean literature. This haunt, HAN, is a big thing, but in Nigeria, it's not haunt, the equivalent of haunt, grief and unresolved stuff. It's not really big, and that's why in my introduction, when I made my brief review, I talked about melancholia, which is different from nostalgia. Melancholia is this resistant mourning. There's something about that. So, but in Korean sense, the haunt goes beyond melancholia. It's something about unresolved grief, and that is what, from what Okey just pointed out, your literature, your poetry is pointing to that. Maybe it could be another lens with which to look at Nigerian literature and poetry. This issue of something equivalent to the Korean haunt, HAN, on this hauntology, grief, unresolvedness of things, and so I want you to put that in your response to Okey's last questions.
All right. So I will speak Igbo. Yeah, no, sir. That's the first language. It's not. My first language is not English. It's Igbo. We wrestle with it in trying to convert that into English. The way Achebe said, what we're going to do with English language will be shocking to people who speak English. And I had a friend who read the book and said some of the lines sounded like what I read in Things Fall Apart, like proverbs and things like that. But that's the way I struggle with writing and documenting what is coming, inspiration that come to me, and you can see also that there was a period you find some Swahili expressions, some words from Kikuyu, which is a language of the Kikuyu people in Kenya, because at that point I was immersed, I was deep into Kenyan society. I had a roommate who was Kenyan at the point that most of these works were written. The question about why did I wait 30 years to publish it? Maybe I should reveal this here. These poems, especially the first part, A Kiss That Never was part of a novel that hasn't been published. I went to a reunion of my university where I did my MFA, and I saw some poetry that were published by my classmates. And I said, oh, I read them. I said, why am I not trying to publish my works? Because I've never sent any work of poetry to anybody to publish. So I said, okay, since this novel is I'm still struggling for 35 years trying to write this novel, Death on Mount Trashmore. Everybody knows the title, but nobody has read the book. In fact, all my friends for 30 years, they keep saying, where is that novel you've been writing, for 30 years? It's not out yet. So what I did was I said, you know what? I went to the book and I extracted some of the poems that I've attached to the book, and then went back to my old diaries. Okay, mentioned the diaries. I'm still keeping them. More than 40 something. I think I started in 1985 or 84 before till today. And there are some periods that I missed some days. But since 2009. I have only missed the period I went to Nigeria last year. I went with a separate book. I didn't want to go with my current booklet. And I got to Nigeria. I forgot it in a hotel. I hope somebody will not find it. But it's just for the period I was there, But that was the only thing missing in the whole period, 2009 till today. So I am continuing to keep the diaries. So that was how that was why it took it. I didn't plan to publish poetry book. But when I saw some of these poems, I said, you know what? I have some poems. Why don't I put it all together? So that was how I put them all together and submitted it to a publisher. And I was surprised, they were interested in publishing it. So that was it. Any other question? Is there any other one you wanted me to address?
Of hauntology, haunts.
Okay.
Yeah, and this grief issue.
Yeah, I think when I spoke to Ikhide, it was something that came up. The trauma that we all experience. I actually, somebody said, "Who is ZP?" I said, we all have our ZP. I hope you have your ZP. If you don't have a ZP, you're in trouble. Maybe you've not lived. But I think we all have our ZPs. The surprising thing is that there were people that I know, very close friends, who told me stories about, like their ZP. And when I gave them this book, they have not commented. They've not said any word to me. And most of them are men. And there's this, I think there's a fear of appearing vulnerable, like you're exposing something you shouldn't have exposed. And I think maybe people will will consider this and know that if you accept, if you accept that there was something that happened to you, and you are carrying it in today's psychology, they call it, trauma, and it's more like a traumatic experience. If you address it, if you look into it and say this is what it is, maybe it will reduce. The moment this thing was accepted for publication and is put out together and it's out there in the world, there's a sense of relief from my own part that, okay, this chapter is closed. Is something that it's something came out of it, and you, in the process, you actually process it. In the process of getting it together, you process the experience. And I think I want to see anybody who will come out here and tell me they don't have a ZP, and I'll meet with them privately.
Yeah.
Okay. So, do you have any?
No. I wanted to again thank you, both Rudolf and Nimi, for really inviting me to be part of this conversation. It's going to be my huge loss that I have to run to do something prosaic like taxes, so I won't be part of the rest of this conversation. But Rudolf, I'll be making my final report to your wife. Thank you.
No problem. Yeah, no problem.
All right. Thank you very much.
Let me tell you, she's afraid of Agu.
Oh, she is? Okay. Okay.
You can't challenge Agu, Nobody does.
She speaks Agu's language. So anyway.
Yes. Okay. So thank you. We're now going to go to the next panelist, which is Ikhide, also the luminary scholar, as they say in Nigeria, who is going to come and then after that, the next person will be Tony Okonta. Then it will be opened up for everyone in the audience to offer their views, their critique, their contribution, and pose their questions. So now we can release Okey to go and do his taxes so the American infrastructure and bridges can go.
Thank you very much.
All right.
Yeah, can go on.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Book. Let's see. A Kiss That Never Was, Poems of Heartbreak and Almost Love, by the one and only Rudolf Okonkwo. It's a book of poetry, it's a book of poems, and it's very interesting. I am old school in the sense that even though many people see me as someone who likes to be in the digital space, I tend to buy hard copy books and then also have an electronic copy on Kindle or someplace else. This book I bought it on I bought it on Kindle, and of course I got a hard copy. But the other day I didn't have to look for it. It turns out that it's always by my side of the bed, which is interesting because I always have a book of poetry with me when I'm about. Whenever I go somewhere, more than likely I'll have a book of poetry with me because I find good poems very comforting. In fact, when I came to this country, I must have had a copy of a book of African poetry with me because that was how we were raised. You read these things. The times have changed, unfortunately, and people are not reading books as much as they should. People are not reading good content as much as they should. But you should read this book. Rudolf wrote the poems in here, as we say, with his blood. It's probably going to end up being one of the most important books of poetry in contemporary times when it comes to Nigerian writing. I say that because we talk a lot about diaspora writing, we talk a lot about on-the-ground writing and in between. This book just pulls everything together. It's It's really amazing. I tend to say these days books are struggling with social media because they are flat. They're not three-dimensional. It takes a lot of creativity. It takes a lot of courage and a lot of vision for a writer these days to be able to put content on paper and have it look like you are seeing stuff in three dimensions. And Rudolf pulls it off and pulls it off really nicely. Uh, there are actually about 21 poems in this book. But it's interesting. The poem that bears the title of the book, A Kiss That Never Was, takes literally half of the book. It's a small book, so don't be intimidated. And again, the title of that poem is A Kiss That Never Was. It's almost like a coming out of a childhood coming out story. Everything is in there, and if you want to, it's a deeply personal poem, not just for Rudolf, but for the reader. You go to the places that the poem has been to. You fall in love with the people that the poem falls in love with. And Rudolf expertly marries the poem with books that I have read. For instance, Whip My Child by James Ngugi, as he was called at the time, the late great James Ngugi, who was later called Ngugi wa Thiong'o. So you should really read that poem, if anything. It takes you to America, it takes you to Kenya, it takes you to all of these places, and it takes you into the heart of the writer, and your heart just goes out to him because you can also relate to him. It's about loss. It's about
he called me, right?
losing something. It's about winning something out of the loss, and it's just a really heartbreaking love story. And I've often asked, a couple of times I've asked,
and this one
is there more to the story? I'd like to know more. What's the backstory to this poem? A Kiss That Never Was. So it's again, it's half the book, and in order to really appreciate it, you've got to savor it yourself. And the thing that I like the most about the book is the innovation. I generally have a problem with a lot of Nigerian poets who tend to reside in the US or in Western institutions, and they come out of those MFA programs with very well disciplined, refined poetry. There is no edge to it. There is no attitude to it. This book has everything plus more. It's got edge, it's got attitude. It's just one long, drunken, beautiful rant that comes straight from the heart of a very sensitive soul. In fact, I was taking notes as I was reading the book, and I put it out in the form of a review. And the title is, believe it or not, is For Rudolf Okonkwo, Of Drunken Rants, Hell's Exile, and That Kiss That Never Was. So read the book, and just in case you were to ask me which is your favorite poem, you already know it's A Kiss That Never Was, because it speaks to me. It also speaks to some of my journeys when I was growing up, when I was young. To give you a sense, in Whip My Child, there are two main characters, Njoroge and Muihaki. Njoroge was in love with Muihaki, and I also fell in love with Muihaki. And so when I saw the correlation with that book, it took me back to my teenage years when I was walking around, moping around in my room, looking for Mihaki. Can you believe falling in love with a character in the book? So there are different, in terms of the innovation, Rudolf experimented with different forms. And outside of that, the poem that I just told you, there is one I really like. It's called Aba Ngwa. And so it brings together a lot of stuff. And I think what I should do is just read it to you. Aba Ngwa, even Chernobyl looked livelier. No, nobody dropped a nuclear bomb here. Just waste. Waste of a generation, begotten by a ravaged generation. Not even in Biafra, with bombs dropping from the sky like rain, did these once proud people crawl their stomachs to lick their own filth. They toast our girls here. They guide bitter leaf soup into their mouths, right in front of this mountain of filth. Dirt is your name, Abba. That is all who call this place home. You may wear white from head to toe, immaculate and conspicuous, to worship at the church of the Holy Ghost. But I tell you, my brother, I tell you, my sister, your soul is as filthy as the walls of the anus. Your government has failed, but so have your hands and your brains, and the little things that make you human. It's playful, it's hurtful, because it goes back in time in history, and it also comes back to now. It's almost like Back to the Future. What has changed in Nigeria? What has changed since Biafra? And what prompted this? There are so many questions that the book pulls up. And the beauty of it is Rudolf allows you to experiment yourself. He's not going to explain it to you. You have to just Google it. And once you Google it, you go down this luscious rabbit hole. And you just don't want it to end. It's a beautiful book. And I just want to say congratulations to Rudolf for pulling off this.
Thank you so much, Ikhide. I was listening to you. I was laughing about the Njeroge.
Yes.
I think you had the same experience as I did when I was growing up. When I read Whip Not Child, I was looking for Milwaukee. I'm still looking for her.
Yes. I was bopping around going, we hacky. I was embarrassed. And now I think about it, embarrassed. How do you fall in love with, I mean, I was a nerd. I was just a geek. How do you fall in love with a book character? That was the power of the book in those days. You know?
Yes.
And when I still remember the last page of the book, when Njoroge went and opened the door for her mother, for his mothers, the loss, just this, and that is what this book does to me. You know, just the, in a sense, life is about constant loss, and it never ends. Really, it never ends. The loss, no matter how old you are always losing stuff, and it's even more painful now because you are too old to tell people that you lost stuff.
Yes.
So you keep it to yourself. You've got kids around you, and your life is one constant episode of love and loss. It's just the way life is.
Yes.
And then you get to a point where society says, you know, you shouldn't be doing that.
You're too old.
You are too old. You're happily married. And we're not talking about physical. We're just, it's hard to explain. And that's what the book does. You just continue to, you begin to read and, yeah, that's what that was about. And you see, that's the other thing that it mirrors. People leading parallel lives, trying very hard to connect, but then giving up because it's silly. It's mathematically, you'll never connect. It's just parallel lives of, beautiful, sad, haunting, longing. And that's just the story of our lives. Then you die. Then
You captured it. You captured it.
Yeah.
Let me surprise you. Like you, I read Whip Not Child in high school, and then in college, one day I wrote the Daily Nation in Nairobi, and I told them I wanted pen friends. I'm a Nigerian. I
Yeah.
was a student of Federal University of Technology, Akure. I wanted pen friends from Kenya. I got like probably more than 100 letters in one day. The next day, more letters from Nairobi, from everywhere in Kenya. And I started writing them. And I started writing those, replying to those people. And till today, I still am in touch with one of my pen friends. Only one remained. I kept in touch with one. I've never met her. And she lives in America. She had followed me around. I've lived in London. Anywhere, we communicate through letters. Now we talk on the phone sometimes. So,
and that's the other thing, people don't know what a pen friend is now.
I know. I just said it that way.
They would just, they had Drum magazine. They had all of those magazines, and you wrote, people will say, I want a pen friend, and you would write long letters and it will get exchanged. And my generation did it. We did it. That was our social media at the time.
Yeah.
But so people will be reading this and they go, young people will be going, what's a pen? My son will probably say, Daddy, what's a pen friend? I will say, well, Google it or ask ChatGPT or Grok.
Exactly.
Yeah. But that's the importance of the book, the cultural depth. That it never occurred to me that we had not started recording. It's there. All of those things. I mean, the things that entertained us. So you remember Fearless Fang of Boom magazine, Lance Spearman, Captain Victor Rabonzolo, all of those picture magazines that were. In fact, my generation, people would cry if they were not given money to buy those picture magazines.
James Hadley Chase.
Yes. James Hadley Chase. All of those.
Pace setters.
Yes, pace setters came. I left the country in 1982.
Okay.
And pace setters came in the 80s, I believe.
Yeah, 80s. Yeah. I was in high school.
And so there was the pace setters I don't know about because it's a marker of the darkness that enveloped me when I came to America. In 82, there was no cell phones, at least not in commercial quantities. There was no internet, no social media, and all of that stuff. Until 1991, when I got my first email, there was just this darkness between 82 and 91. And if you wanted to call somebody, if you wanted to call home,
you have
it's a
to
long
tell them.
process. It's a long, expensive process. Now, unfortunately, there's just oversharing. People can tell when I'm on. I finally found out how to change it on the settings. People can tell when I'm on
Once
WhatsApp.
they know you're online, they will bombard you with.
They'll start bombarding you with billing and all kinds of things. So yeah, I still think on balance it's a good thing that we are so connected. Children are coming in from Nigeria these days. The internet has oriented them. They've done the orientation. We had to go to a school to be oriented in the ways of this country. We were told, you remember, if you really want to understand this country, watch sitcoms.
And I did.
And it saved my butt.
Cosby,
watch sitcoms.
Fresh Prince of Bel-Air,
yes.
Roseanne.
Watch American football. Statistics was all about American football. And our statistics teacher said, you will have to go watch football to understand what I'm telling you. So, but now, people, they're coming in from they're buying data on the plane and texting you, you see. So I don't know what's going to come next, but your book captures, the trajectory of our lives. It's as if I was too lazy to write about my losses and you wrote it for me.
One of the things conversation I wanted to have with people who read this book is there were people who got it and they did not respond to me. I don't know, this kind of silence I don't understand, especially from men.
Yeah.
It was as if, why did you say this? Why are you?
Yeah, it's painful. Yeah.
Why are you revealing this?
Yeah, I have no shame to admit
It was unbelievable. These are people that traditionally, when I write something, they read and they respond, but they, total like conspiracy.
It's deeply personal to the reader of my generation. In fact, I want to buy the book and give to one of my daughters, who is basically my demons walking around in pumps, so she can understand me even more. She's quite a character. She was working somewhere, and then she got a job, and they did a send-off party for her, which we were invited. And the first thing the boss told me was, "You spoiled that girl. She's a brat." And I said, "Guilty as charged." Guilty as charged. I said, she is my walking demons, walking around the pumps. And you've got kids, the one that is you, that is going to get into the kinds of trouble you got into.
Yeah.
And so, in a sense, you roll over the pages, and you can see yourself in the. You can see, my generation can see themselves in the, and younger people who want to understand us some more should go over there and read these things and look at a time when there was not even email. You go into the airport to pick somebody up, and the person is hoping that you are there waiting, because they wrote you a long letter saying, "I'm coming." It's in the book. It's in the book, right?
Yeah.
You go there with your friend. Is it? I think. Yeah. You go there with your friend.
With my friend. Yeah, to pick up. Yeah.
Unjoroge, or is it?
Yeah.
Yeah. You go there with your friend to pick up, and the person is Zip. What's the full name?
Zippora.
Zippora. Yeah. Zippora is just hoping that you are there waiting.
Yes.
But before, but now they will be in the custom chute. They'll be texting you, "I am here. They are harassing me. What should I tell them?"
I've landed.
You have landed. These people. We went and picked up somebody. It took them 3 hours to get out of the customs chute, because they were,
they had fish.
Is it only fish? They had Nigerian passports.
One of the mistakes that people make is, if you are coming into the United States, they ask you, "Do you have this and this?" You better say yes.
Yeah, tell the truth.
If you say no, and they find out, you're in trouble.
Yeah. And they can find you, and then they put you on that list forever, where they just keep monitoring you. But who goes to Nigeria and comes back without fish? I mean, who does? So tell me. I've always wanted to ask you, why did you write A Kiss That Never Was? That is the poem itself.
Yeah.
Why did you decide to put it? Yeah.
Because.
And when did you start writing it also?
Oh yeah, it was long ago, more than 30 years ago.
Oh wow.
Yeah, I was writing it as the events were happening. In most cases, I just put it all together. But yeah, they were raw. They were, in most cases, written as they came, and the inspiration came.
Yeah, that was obvious. Yeah.
Yeah,
some of it was drunken stuff.
Yeah, it wasn't painted. It wasn't. It wasn't
in a good way.
It wasn't beautified. It wasn't anything like that. So, yeah, but it was kind of getting it published and putting it together was a relief. It was like, okay, this.
I mean, the thing that I liked, the other thing I liked about it also is, the packaging is not contrived. That is, there is no central theme to it. You have to make up the theme yourself as a reader. You have to decide, what is this trying to tell me? It's not this slick packaging where it is, all the poems are curated and it's almost, shall we say, patronizing. They just try to force the reader through a particular path. This is how you should look at it. But it's just there. I mean, how do you go from the airport and then fly, then drive all the way to, is it Norfolk, Virginia?
Yeah.
And then suddenly we are in Biafra.
but in general, thinking about the decision on the title, if you think about Biafra, it was also kind of a dream, a kiss that never was. So it encompasses, desires that didn't actually happen, and how they haunt you, because Biafra is still haunting people who once had that dream. All right. Welcome back.
Okay, okay, so welcome back to another segment. As you can see, we're having these discussions in segments, so that on YouTube you can watch it in segments, and if you're not able to watch it live, so we've done 3 segments already. We are now going to go to the 4th segment with Dr. Tonia Okota, who is going to also engage with the work. After that, then the 5th segment will be opened up to the public for people to air their views about the book and what they've learned in the earlier 4 segments. But before we call on Tony to come in, an issue came up in the last segment between Ikhide and our author Okonkwo, and they said they read "Weep Not Child," and they were surprised. I mean, they are saying that they fell in love with a character. I mean, 2 different characters or so, and that they found that a little surprising, or they see that as something for us to ponder, and that is true, and that goes back to actually 2,500 years ago. So the reason Aristotle wrote 2,500 years ago, he lived 450 years before Christ. So that's about 2,500 years ago. And he made the point, he came to a realization that he said the best way to teach ethics is to teach it through literature. I mean, he was a great philosopher, but he finally realized that not writers in his time, they were tragedies, right? The playwrights, the playwright are better forms of ethical thinkers. I mean, they achieve better results than the philosophers himself, because he came to this conclusion. He said, as a philosopher or as an ethicist, you are writing ethical book, philosophical book, to change people's behavior, the way they behave, make them better human beings, to feel the pains of another, so that they can behave better. So how do they? I mean, it's Nicomachean ethics. The book is about how do we live together in a society so that we can all flourish, have human flourishing. He call it eudaimonia. But he said that people who write plays in his time achieve that purpose, in the sense that people will go to the theater and they will fall in love with the characters, and they get sad or angry when something happens to the character. But he said those same human beings will come out and they don't feel that sense of empathy towards their neighbor, towards people who work in the same place with them, towards their family member. So he said, what is it about the literary skill that will make people to fall in love with characters, and that they will not fall in love or treat their physical human beings by themselves better? So that always puzzled Aristotle. So that's what the guys were seeing, I'm sure. But when you and Ikhide were falling in love, or really came to like particular characters, the people who were living around you in the same neighborhood, in the same country, on the same street, you did feel that sense of empathy. And that is the magic of writing. And that is why, and that idea that literature can do what ethicists or philosophers cannot do, that's what led me, for the past 15 years or so, I've taught a graduate course, a master's and a doctoral course, a seminar on ethics and literature, where I bring students to study literary works, starting from Antigone, and go all the way to what will be on New York Times bestseller in that year. I teach it every 2 years, right? So we go from the old classic tragedy just to get into a sense of what Aristotle was saying, and then walk our way through. Where we can't cover everything, so that students can learn to extract ethics from literary works. They could learn to see what Aristotle saw, and that they will learn to have greater respect for writers and novelists. So I even wrote a book on social governance and writing in Africa, where I studied some writers in Nigeria to show the depth of a philosophical thinking or ethical thinking in the work that they do, to say writers need to be taken seriously as thinkers on their own right, and that they're philosophers, and they have this magic of making people to fall in love with characters. If only those of us that teach philosophy can, or even those of us that are pastors or imams, can actually achieve that goal that writers can achieve with their characters. And that is the conundrum that we face, that how could writers create characters that we can fall in love with the characters, but then we cannot fall in love with our flesh and blood or with somebody around. So that is an old conundrum. So, and I teach literature and ethics at the doctoral level, master's level, just to get, if I could get a little bit of that magic into a bottle for my graduate and doctoral students. So I just wanted to comment on that. And then we'll call on Tonia to come, Okonta to come up. So can you put him on, please?
Yeah. Greetings, Prof. Greetings, Dr. Damages. Congratulations for this book.
Thank you.
I have read it, and I would recommend it to anybody. It's an easy read, just 87 pages.
Okay, so this is what I want you to do for the sake of our readers. We are bringing different scholars, different thinkers to give us different perspective.
Yes.
So if you can offer a short review, maybe 5-6 minutes review, then after that you can pose some questions to Rudolf Okonkwo, and that will be all we expect you to do. We don't want to take too much of your time, but if you can give us kind of your take on the book.
Okay. Quickly, let me just correct something that I don't hold a PhD degree, so I just wanted to correct that. I'm just simply Tonio Kunta, but that's okay. Thank you. I think just listening, Professor Nimi Wariboko and Professor Okey Ndibe and Ikhide, have both comprehensively dissected this book. And in a way that there's hardly any much to add. But I have impressions about the book because I've read it, and so I'm going to go through. First of all, I think it's a potpourri of experiences that are presented in ways that are very, very relatable. I noticed that it's. I made some jottings, my impressions of the book. So I noticed that it's a departure from Rudolph's usual biting political satire and journalistic prose. I think this time he focuses on themes of intimacy, loss, and the complexities of human relationship, which resonates with me, particularly in my days as a young man, as a youth. And again, I say in a very relatable way. My impression is that the book is structured around the unfulfilled, this is in quote because that also appeared in the book, exploring the weight of things that never quite came to fruition. in the highs, in my opinion, you see the artistic sublimation of pain. When I was reading the book, I was thinking of the match that Nigeria had with the Soviet Union then, as it was in 1989. This was the FIFA Under-20 World Championship that was held in Dammam in Saudi Arabia. And first half, Nigeria was down by 4 goals. It was 4-0. And I think the Soviet Union thought they had it in the bag. And so in the second half, they had taken away their strikers and so on in preparation for the finals, because this was the semi-final encounter. And so they took Oleg Selenko out and so many others because they thought, oh, 4-0, that's done. And gradually, I don't know where Nigeria got the strength. Summoned, the usual Nigerian spirit. 4-1, 4-2, 4-3, 4-4. Full time it was 4-4. Some people had gone away, shut down their tellies and their radios and so on and so forth, bitter and so on and so forth. But when they had the shouts and the screams, wondering what's happening, Nigeria was up 4-4. And they went ahead to win that match 4-3. That match was styled the Dammam Miracle. Greatest comeback by any team, soccer team in the world up till now. Nigeria went to the finals and took the silver medal, lost by 2-0 to Portugal. But what's the relevance of this story? I see. You see the enthusiasm. You see the feeling of victory, of something that you have been chasing. That's on the part of the Soviet Union. Almost close to you. You can see it. It's palpable. You can feel it. You can touch it. Victory was in sight. And suddenly, the entire thing evaporates before your eyes. And you are standing and looking. It's like a mirage, like, an unfulfilled hope, and almost something that appeared at a point that it was going to be, but never was. And so that's the way I see a kiss that never was. You were so close, you gave it all that you had, you look forward to this romance, and perhaps your underpants was wet because you had an expectation, and you put in everything that you had. And then suddenly, before your very eyes, you see this whole thing evaporate. And it can be heart-rending. And it's something that I can relate to. And I'm sure some of us who are listening can relate to that kind of experience. So it's, for me, very striking, because the writer, Rudolf, explores the idea that an unconsummated love, or an almost, this is in quote, relationship can be more creatively potent than a realized one. I see the presence of ZP, and I'm going to ask Dr. Damages, when the time comes, whether this was I'm asking for a confession whether this was a real experience. If that's not going to put you in trouble, because what ZP did, he was a recurring figure of unrequited affection, serves as a mousse, that transforms, personal ache into a freshly minted farewell philosophy. For what I consider as the lows would be, the visceral descriptions of grief, not just for a person, but for interrupted destinies. So here you see the writer, touch on, stubborn ambitions, linking personal heartbreak to historical trauma of the Biafran War. So that linkage, is very, very striking. Because Biafra came with so much expectation. People were hopeful, and at the beginning, it looked so achievable. It looks like something, particularly when Biafra went into the Midwest and then over to the West. It was all hope. It was that expectation that something good was going to come. Suddenly that hope, fizzled out, and so it ties very well with what the book, A Kiss That Never Was. It was an almost, so that's part of my understanding. Lessons, quickly. The book prognosticates that heartache, heartbreak is a creative ignition rather than a terminal point. The persistence of almost, in the book suggests that we are shaped more by our fractures and almost than our successes. So these are some of my experiences. If you ask for what is my best, let's see, talking about, yes, the book reflects on the shift from the pen pal tenderness of the past. Many people, some of us would not identify with that, because I think it was by Ikhide that spoke about it. The steady light of the digital age, suggesting the loss of patience in modern connection. So there's a transformation, that we see here. And then finally, because of time, let me just say that, let's see what I have next here. Yeah, the unveiling of Zip is intellectually and emotionally stimulating. Why? Because it functions almost like a detective story of the heart. Zippy is presented as a woman who presents the almost love of the writer's life. So now the excitement here lies in the vulnerability, seeing a writer known for public satire strip away his armor to discuss a decade-long emotional dialogue with a ghost, in quote, gripping, so basically those are some of my impressions of it. For the later part of the book, the poems, what struck me more was the one in page let's see, yeah, page 71 already has been talked about. Sometime many years ago, there was this someone from Europe who came to Nigeria, and he was going to a place called Agbaro, was going to look for a witch, a self-confessed witch, and he had heard of the quote unquote the exploits of this witch and the kind of things that he was doing. And so he came all the way, somewhere close to Warri, and he was looking for this witch. He came with money, was going to pay him so that he would be schooled in the art of witchcraft. His intention was to see how he can use, this knowledge, not in a negative way, but in a positive way to transform society. Because it was incredible to him, the things that he heard that the man was able to do or could do with the power that he heard. And I think I buy into what it was said here about how we can use some of this knowledge. You can't prove it scientifically, but we know that it does exist as Africans. How can we use it? Basanjo once talked about using juju to, tight appetite in South Africa in those days. But how can we use this knowledge that we have in a way that will benefit society instead of it's the way it's being applied. That science is dying. I can tell you, I had an experience where a man killed somebody who was tapping his palm wine. And in the milieu that ensued, not that it was intentional, but he killed a man, and so they took him to court. And then they went to his grandmother. This is the real life story. Went to his grandmother to say, your son, your grandson is in trouble. He's been taken to court, and if you go by what he did, he's probably going to be killed. And the woman said, okay. When would be the court appearance? When is going to be taken to court? When is going to appear? They told her, and she said, okay, she will quash the case. This is a woman that is not educated, can't even speak English. And so that day she came to court. I don't know what she did. And then after all the ruling and the trial and so on, the judge dismissed the case. So it goes back to the same thing that we're talking about. There's a way in which some of these things we can study them. Unfortunately, we don't study them in universities. These skills are not passed to people so that by the time they die off, and then this is a big loss for Africa. But there's a way that we can translate some of these things into ways that will be more positive and advance society. So that struck me, the witches of Oshodi, and then the other thing, page 81, where you have Buhari, your print is too small. I know it's a reaction to the NSAS thing that we had, quite a lot of people that was killed, and the government was in denial and so on and so forth. But realistically, what I wanted to ask Dr. Damages, we see people, journalists, do some very daring things, go to war fronts, battlefield, and very, very dangerous. But here, you were talking about Buhari's speech, and I wanted to ask you, did you really see his speech? And how does it look? Thank you. Let me stop there.
On that note, Dr. Rudolf, you don't have to answer that.
I can answer that.
Yeah, you can. Anyway, so before we go on, I was just looking at the chat on the that came up, not on the YouTube or this, but on the StreamYard. Somebody said that the kiss that never was is actually democracy in Nigeria. Yeah, the person said democracy in Nigeria and all the things that were promised to Nigerians are never really fulfilled. So you could see someone here is actually expanding the concept to say the kiss that never was, it's also the issue of free election democracy or fair INEC. We keep always saying we are going to get there, but it's an Rudolf, what people don't know, Rudolf originally was trained as an engineer. So he knows the asymptotic line, right? The line never comes, but it never really touches. Always you are close, but there's always an infinitesimal distance between the line and whatever it is approaching never gets there. So if Tonya still has time to stay, he can stay. We can now open it up to take questions. We have about 30 to 45 minutes to round up, and I would thank Tonya for the work that he has done, for Ikhide and for Okey Ndibe, for everyone that have participated. Now, because this program is real democracy, it's not democracy as a kiss never had, we promise to come back to the democratic audience. So now it's your turn. You are going to have your kiss. Yeah, we are going to have your kiss with the quote unquote with the author and the book. Well, but if time does not allow us to get to everybody, know that a kiss that you never had is not our problem. Is you can go and blame time, or you can take time to court, as they do in Nigeria, people. So Dr. Damages, who is skilled at this thing better than than I can ever be on this matter, would give the mic, the provider mic, to somebody to ask you a question, or ask a question, or offer a review. Please do not take more than 2 minutes, so that way we can get to as many people as we can. So, Dr. Damages, I hand over the baton or the microphone to you.
All right. Thank you so much for a wonderful job.
Yeah. So please remember, at the end of everything, we are going to reserve 5 to 6 minutes for your total response to everything.
All right. Thank you so much. Let's begin with thank you for the work you did. It was wonderful, and I hope we do more of this with other writers. So for writers who are watching, this is going to be a series. We hope to do it once a month. We'll get you here, and somebody will moderate, and there'll be conversations on your work, which is something we don't do much in Nigeria. All right, let's start with KJ. KJ, go ahead.
Okay, thank you so much. Unfortunately, I have only 2 minutes, so I'll try and be there before time runs out. What's up?
We can hear you.
Sorry, I can hear myself. Go ahead, somebody else. Let me correct it.
Okay, all right. Let's go to Ovie. Ovie, you're next.
Well, since not 2 minutes, let me reduce my 5,000 page review to 2,000. Dr. Dameji, the Okonkwo himself, you had me between, reminiscing over my nursery school sweetheart, and fantasizing over my love and relationship with the Queen of Wakanda that never was. So if you accuse me of not reading past the page, you might be right. But I think few people here don't already, pressurize into my work already. People like Tony, who pay more emphasis on almost. But at the same time, I also pressurize the works of Okey Ndibe and Ikhide Ikheloa, who were here a couple of minutes ago. So in the case that never was, Okonkwo captured the heavy lingering gravity of the almost, rather than mourning a fairy ending or a dramatic fracture. The poem dwells in the quiet, decade-long aches of connection that never quite cross the threshold into reality. Just like my nursery school sweethearts that she'd hand. He identifies a woman, ZP. From my perspective, I think that is Nigeria, as the focal point of his perpetual suspense. For Okonkwo, the physical act of a kiss is secondary to the looks. A shared gaze shared with a lifetime of unspoken intent. This visual connection carries more emotional weight than any physical encounter could, suggesting that the most haunting ghosts aren't the people we lost, but the version of ourselves we never got to be with them. The almost to me is almost a nation. In his, as a satirist, political satirist, most of his essay, Okonkwo often writes about Nigeria as a country of almost great, almost democratic, almost functional. But in this poetry collection, Okonkwo takes that political frustration and internalize it. He views heartbreak not just as a romantic failure, but as a civilizational one. The same way a nation can fail to crystallize, a love can fail to begin. Just like my relationship with the Queen of Wakanda, never begun, never was. Even in this poetry, Okonkwo can't entirely escape his wit. Fellow writer Okey Ndibe once noted that the collection is hilariously funny. In his own way, showing that even when Okonkwo is heartbroken, he remains a wickedly mean observer of human absurdity. Hence, the hate he has for him that he says a while ago. Now, the spirit of Agu that he pictured on his work. At the top of the spirit of Agu is a man called Chinua Achebe. In Achebe's work on There Was a Country, he mourns a nation that briefly declared independence, Biafra, 1967 to 1970, only to be crushed, leaving haunting absence. The phrase "there was" evokes something real yet irretrievably lost. Idealism betrayed by war, starvation, betrayers, and integration into a flawed Nigeria. Similarly, Okonkwo works on a kiss that never was, centered on the fragile country of the almost. A romantic kiss, hug, wedding, or dreams that never materialize, yet continues to shape Okonkwo's life decades later. In both, the wound is not just absence, but the persistent shadow of potential, the road not yet taken, the nation, dreams that flitter and die. If Achebe's book is memorial service for a fallen nation and the millions of life lost to a dream, Okonkwo's book is quiet conversation. It's a quiet conversation. The last phrase, it's quiet conversation in a dim room about a person you never quite manage to stay with. Achebe asks, where did the country go wrong? Okonkwo asks, where did we go wrong? Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much. You didn't introduce yourself, so because this is being recorded and we played on YouTube, so your name and a little bit one line.
My name is Ovie, also known as Honor Politics.
Okay. So please, next speak before you speak, introduce yourself and one line about your biography, so that readers can know who is speaking. I mean, viewers can know who is speaking. Yes.
I was trying to be conscious of the 2 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, Ovie. Thank you so much. KJ, let's try you again.
Okay, thank you so much, Rudolf. My name is KJ. I'm a media person. I've been in every area of media, so I don't want to go beyond that. Rudolf, your book, I hope you're not one of those going around trying to kiss young girls those days. Are you? Well, I just want to be sure, because these things you never know growing up. But you see, I like your boldness. Not many of us could have been able to put that down. Even today, we walk around and we see some of our sweetheart, sweet love, sweet whatever you call it those days, and we look at them and say, wow, life has brought us this far and this apart. Some are together, some are still friends, some are not. But reading through your book, I was quite impressed the way you used to put it, bluntly, even though others can give it a lot of interpretation. But I chose to go this way. You were quite courageous and honest, for which I don't think many of us will be able to do. And it's entertaining. For me, it was quite entertaining and gives me all kinds of memory. And just like some of the speakers were explaining earlier, when you, the guy who made a reference to is it Aristotle or Oscar Brockett? I don't know which one I refer to, which said that, when you pick a literal work, or when you are sitting in the theater, there's that willful suspension of disbelief, which allows you to enjoy the literal work, even though somehow it's a story, it's being written, it's being constructed, but you still go along with the emotions and everything that goes along with it. That gives you the opportunity to enjoy whatever you are watching and brings the message home to you. Is it true sometimes, because in the spirit world, and which you dive into a bit, the mind does not know when it's truth and when it's not. So that's why certain people will tell you don't speak anyhow, because you see, what you speak may just happen to you. And so, yes, I enjoyed reading it. I still have a copy with me. And yeah, I also like the blend between politics and poetry and all that you move between without much ado, and the style that it gives you the opportunity or the freedom to be able to wave in, you're not constrained to any genre, you could just move in. And it gave the reader or me that opportunity to be able to flow along with you, not being restricted, trying to look for, okay, what do you mean by this? Or what do you mean by that? You can easily pick out what the writer is trying to portray. I like a lot of references that you used, even though I'm not going to talk about Buhari something, but I'll go to other parts, I like the quotation you used, and I think we should.
So can you round up? Your 2 minutes is over,
Oh,
sir.
I'm sorry. Okay, here is one of the questions. He said, a poet who looks back becomes a madman, and a madman who looks forward or back becomes a what? Becomes a poet. So I would like you to expatiate on that, even though I know literally what I don't say, but how can a madman who is now looking back become a poet? Is it because he has spoken certain things that have happened, or what do you mean?
All right. Thank you. Am I supposed to answer Nimi now?
Yeah, you can.
Okay,
You can.
okay.
So while you can quickly answer. You have a minute to answer. Yeah.
Okay, so that's actually the most, to me, the most important line in the whole work. That you probably have noticed. I I don't know how to say this. I like analyzing or watching the people we call mad people in Nigeria. I have this short story that is not yet published, where the people we call mad people in Nigeria, there's some medication you take home to Nigeria and give it to them, they will just become your colleague in the office. There are a lot of people moving around in America and Western world who take medications that if they stop taking it, they will be on the street, just like those people you see in markets around Nigeria. So we used to say that mad people call mad people in Nigeria, are people who cannot control what is coming out from their mouth. Our doctor is responding to me. Coming out from their mouth, he knows what I'm talking about. People who cannot control what's coming out from their mouth. So they, a lot of things are coming at the same time. So it appears as if they are not coordinated. But if they can pause, then they will be able to know. They will be a poet. Those people will be poets. But because they cannot control it at that point that you see them and you think they are mad people, because they can't control the amount of words coming into their mind at the same time. That's really the idea. That potential is in them. The people we call mad people have potential to live normal life, to even be great, if we can intervene. That's what is missing. So that's what I put in that sentence in that way. Let's move on to
Time. Okay, so why do you move on to call somebody? Is there any question on YouTube or any of that?
Yeah, there are some comments that somebody said, okay, let me see. Someone said, Rudolf, did you live in Akure in the 80s? Yes, I went to school at the Federal University of Technology, Akure, in the 80s, and 90s. So I spent 5 years at FUTA. Let's see. I didn't. Let Mascot speak. I will go through the.
Okay.
Yeah, Mascot, go ahead.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Nimi. Thank you, Mr. Rudolph. I just got a copy of the book from Kindle, I think about 30 minutes ago. I've just simply browsed through. But I will make time to digest it, to read it and digest it. But I'm just joining simply to comment and congratulate Mr. Rudolph. Because I know that writing a book, it's much more than talent and mere inspirations. to get this book to print and to be able to make it available to us, I believe it takes a lot of discipline, but more importantly, I think a stubborn desire to share with us. So thank you, Mr. Rudolph. But the interesting thing is, the more I get to know you, Mr. Rudolph, what is beginning to be increasingly clear to me is the very big size of your heart. So I'm not surprised that there is a need for unbundling some of the things that are there inside. But well done and congratulations. I certainly would read and most likely share some of my feedback with you. But I think from all the comments and from the knowledge of you that I have already, I know that look, it's deep. It's a deep work. So once again, congratulations and thank you for. I know how much work it would have required for you to make sure you get it out. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Maska. There's another question on the comment section. Can I ask a question from the comment? Okay, he said, essentially he's saying, do you have any memories of the war? He was referring to writing more than just what you know, that he suspects I'm too young to know anything about the war. Yeah, I didn't see the war. I didn't know anything about what happened during the war. But like I said in some of the stories there, you know people who lost people. I went to school with people who had no dad, no mom, and when you ask questions, you find out they died during the war. And for those who grew up in the southeast and south who saw this impact of this war more than any other part of Nigeria. In my high school, we were digging ground for flood and we saw a bomb. We didn't know what a bomb was, but we saw one big thing and we were told to run away. This is an unexploded bomb. And so it's all around you in different ways that some people didn't come back from war. This person, there were many in this family, but 3 of them died during the war. So even if you didn't say it, you know that it happened. I had an uncle who lost a finger, and one day I saw his hands. I said, what happened to your finger? Oh, I lost it during the war. So it's not something that you don't have to be there physically and experience it to know that it impacted people. All right. So did we leave anybody? No, I think we.
Yeah. So before you go on to get more questions from the audience or so, I want to put a discussion out there. People can respond to it. Those of us right now in the panel or from watching from YouTube or so. So I have been and this there's no right way to decide this issue. Now, Okonkwo wrote this Zepi, right? And most people assume that this is autobiographical. It may or may not be, right? We don't know. Except he has a confession to make. Until he makes that confession, we don't know, right? So, but where I come in is while writers, a piece of literary work could be autobiographical, but at the same time, we have to be very careful because I've seen some novelists report, have complained to me in a private discussion that they write a scene in the novel, maybe they're writing a novel and there's a loose girl in the novel, and then if the person is a woman, then some readers will think that, oh, you are also a loose person, and that's why you are writing that. So we tend to jump from the nature or the characterization into the personal life. So we don't allow the writer to use their imagination. Maybe Zebi is all completely made up, right? Completely made up. But Okonkwo takes us into the particularity of that fictional character that we begin to see ourselves, our story. And we, like in my own introduction, I said, we begin to go from the particular to the universal because the particular is presented very well to us and we can rise from there. It's just like asking Ashebe if he knew if his uncle was Okonkwo. in the no, it's I don't know, but it's all made up, right? So I'm not asking our friend Rudolf to make a confession, but at the same time, I want people to know that JP could be one JP in his life or a million JPs or no JPs at all, and he's just fantasizing as a fictional writer. And for the fact that he made the character believable, so much so that we think that it must have some basis in reality, in history, that is a testament to his writing skill, not a prediction or a reading back into his history, until we know otherwise. So Okey is not here. So Okey was saying the dangerous part. Maybe there is no danger to it. It's just it's just it's just a story, right? Exactly.
Yeah, that's very important. You know, when writers write, people want to believe that you couldn't have made it up, you couldn't have made up these stories. But every day, if you're a writer or you're interested in that, you hear stories. And sometimes I've gone back to look at things I wrote 20 years ago, 10 years ago, and I'll be thinking, when did I write this? Where did it come from? Or you have characters. Like I said, this whole poetry book came from a novel that I've been writing for 30 something years. The character in that novel is still talking to me. It's still every day. You go and change something. Something will happen. You experience something or you hear something. You go back to the character. The character will say, okay, can we do this? Can we? So sometimes I start a novel or a short story. I don't know where it's going to end when I started. And the character will lead you to a certain point and it ends there. So it's very important. People, I know writers have issues with that when people associate their characters with them. I once asked Chimamanda about the character in Americana. I said, you know, this your character Ifemelo. I said, you know, I feel like she's like you in many ways, and I know I've met her many times. I know how, you know, she acts, and you know, I read the book many times. I teach the book in my class, and she said to me that Ifemelo is more interesting than I am. So for most writers, your life is not as interesting to make it a book. I mean, there may be elements, you know, for instance, I can take my character to Akure because I know Akure. It doesn't mean because the character is in Akure, that means it was me, you know. I may take my character to, I actually wrote a novel, not a novel, a short story set in Kenya before I went to Kenya. And I gave it to my Kenyan friends to read. And they were surprised because I've never been to, then I was never in Kenya. I didn't know where Nairobi, how do you get to Mombasa? I didn't know the air, how it smells. You know, I didn't know much about Kenya, but I was able to put it together. Take somebody from United States, take them to Kenya, take them to wherever I wanted them to be and to do things and to speak Swahili. I don't speak Swahili. I can say a few words in Swahili. But it's easy for people to just, that's the first conclusion, but that will fool you. But I'm not making any confession about Zippy. I can tell you that Zippy. What I can tell you is that there is Zippy. It's a character. It's a real person. Zippy is real. But you know, the way it was presented and everything, you know, there is the magic now. It's like,
but is that not the magic of writing, that we can all each read Zippy and think we know it's a personal friend. It's a personal. That is the magic of a good writing. I remember when I was in high school, secondary school. There is a guy who, after we read Things Fall Apart, he believed so much in Things Fall Apart that he began to walk with his heels not almost touching the ground. and by the time we finished, and this was like class 1 or 2, and it was, in those days, it was 5 years. By the time he finished, he has developed some serious calf muscles on top, because his heels were normal. He was now walking on his toes. I mean, it completely changes his life. He was imitating
Okonkwo.
Okonkwo. So those things happened when in class 1. We are 11-year, 12-year-old, and we are reading Lamb's Tales from Shakespeare, right? So, for me, so I fell in love with the character Macduff in Macbeth, because he was able to take care of Macbeth, right? I always I always like people who fight oppressors or bad people or Macduff. So in those days, when we were secondary school, the way there was no social media, one of the ways you popularize your nickname, you write it on your sneakers. So you write the name. So I wrote my class 1. Everybody has to pick a nickname, right? It's like rite of passage, right? You get a character. So my character was Macduff, and I wrote Macduff, the Lord of Fifth. Fool, 11, 12-year-old boy, what do I know? I put the whole Macduff. And then a class 3 student caught me one day and said, who gave you the right to answer Macduff, the Lord of Fifth? You're a toad. That's what they call you're a toad. You can't answer out of Macduff, that you have to change your name. I said, no, we'll change it. He said, I'm going to punish you those days in Nigerian boarding school. So what did he do? So we reached a compromise. He said, I'm going to keep the name Macduff because I was here before you. My nickname is Macduff, but since you put Macduff, the Lord of Fifth, your nickname is going to be the Lord of Fifth. So we reached a compromise. Of course, my classmates, the name faded out. All the part they could remember is the Lord. So today, if I meet my old classmates, they will call me the Lord. And people say, where did that name came from? This was like a long time ago. But that is the power of literature, right? We just fell in love with that character. Did some of those stories happen to Shakespeare? Yes, some of them were historical stories that he fictionalized, right? Mm-hmm. But that is the power of literature. They never know whether the writer is completely making up or with a little bit of history or reality, the person creates a whole character out of nothingness, or so. And that's what could also make the poet a madman, right? Because he says something that's out of nothingness, just like a madman talking also.
And I wanted to say one last thing about this, that the hope of any writer is that when you read their work, even if it's fiction or non-fiction, you can relate, you can connect it to something you know. And I believe most people can relate to a ZP in their life, and they're able to, and that's when the job is done. If by reading it without knowing whether it's the real person or not, that you can relate. That's my final word on there.
But I think
okay, go on.
Yeah, from my perspective, that's why I brought the work of Chinua Achebe, There Was a Nation. So the ZP for me represents the ultimate symbol of unfulfilled potential, rather than a specific historic figure or a lost love, in the traditional sense. She serves as a personifier of the almost, that's why I use that word. When Achebe was talking about the country that was existed, for about 3 years, and even at this point, Okonkwo is approaching it as a bridge that was never crossed. The idea of the Biafra is still there, but there is this war called Nigeria that they integrated in. But how do we cross? Is this something that can still be crossable? Those are the questions that comes to my mind when I actually approach that part. Just like as Achebe write for the future, which Okonkwo represents, Okonkwo is also putting that curiosity out there in the form of a poetry to the future generation, who, for me, I believe the generation will come and fuse that two curiosity together of there was a country which now is a bridge as in Nigeria, which Okonkwo fantasized about. To him, he believed that it can never materialize. It will never come to reality. But I am saying that the future, they said, is pregnant. You never can tell. He's just a figure right now, just like Achebe stands as one. But I foresee a generation that will have the same capacity and incline to say, you know what? Let's even see if we can cross that threshold. that country that they said there was, as if it's achievable, which some will say the struggle is still on. It's still alive within Nnamdi Kanu and Samuel Mpanko, and
Yes. Okay. So thank you, V. I think we have about 10 to 15 minutes to.
Okay, let me quickly touch on.
To round up. So there are 3 more issues. I think there's one more question or 2 that we can take, and then we'll ask Dr. Rudolf Okonkwo, Dr. Megis, to give us his response to everything that he has. But before we go on, we talked about the power of literature to bring people together, to create empathy, and for us to look at the particular character of Zebi and find the universal nature of our existence in Zebi. But we also need to be very careful that same good quality of writers that makes them create characters that we can relate with, just like Aristotle said, it's a good thing. They can create characters that we can sympathize with. But that same quality also make writers very dangerous. And so I don't want us to lose that part, or students who are going to look at this or YouTube to forget that part. Because so Aristotle was a student of Plato. So Aristotle celebrated the power of writing to bring people, but Plato was very skeptical about it. In short, in his book, The Republic, where he was trying to create an idea of a perfect, ideal society, he banned poets. So people like Rudolf Okonkwo will not be allowed into the ideal society of Plato about poets, because he felt that poets and writers can manipulate emotions in a way that is dangerous for society. Because that same way that we see ourselves in Zepi for the good, also a poet, a writer can make us also fall in love with a character in a way that is detrimental to society or can provoke violence. So Aristotle celebrated the power of writing, creative writing, but Plato was skeptical, right? So whether ultimately Zepi is a good person or not, it depends on individuals. It might be if you have a lover, a wife, a husband, or so, you don't want any Zepis in your spouse's life at all to come up. So you said any writer that is bringing up any Zepi, Zepi is a bad person, right? It depends on where you're coming from. But if you are, like KJ said, if you're walking on the street and you meet somebody, then Zepi is a good feeling to have. So that thing about writing, right? It is ambiguous. It could go both ways. But sometimes the writer cannot determine how the work is interpreted or will be used. Somebody will see Rudolph's work and says, I don't like Rudolph. He reminds me, he's going to make my husband or my wife remember somebody that I don't want them to remember. Those people will not invite Rudolph back. But some people will say, Rudolph says, don't give up on your desire. Sometimes look back on the past and says, well, it was good. Right? Okay, so Rudolph, I will hand over to you to curate the next question if there's still 1 or 2.
Yeah, there are 2.
If you give me 1 minute, I just wanted to ask something, Doc, if you don't mind. Rudolph, I think you did a great job. I say this as an actor who is a trained artist. It is difficult for you to interpret a character and people can actually grab it, make it human. Because they use all this word and yet people can't grab what you're saying. So for me, I was carried in. Even though you were mischievous and wrapping it in a love, in a love romantic scene, but we all were able to chameleonously find ourselves changing colors from one point to the other. So when I read part of it, I said, "Cop, this guy, what's he trying to do? Is he trying to get us back to our secondary school days or something?" But you carried it. You carried it, and I appreciate that. It's a great work for anybody who is out there who is interested in literary work. You should pick one of these and make it something that you can always have, to talk about. If you want to talk about your past or your present or your future, because it captures everything. It encapsulates everything in one go. And like I said, Doc here and Okey Ndibe, these are people I want to be like. I've told Okey Ndibe many times. See the way when he was twisting the English, I said, "Kai, I cannot eat any longer. Let me leave the food and listen to this man." Unfortunately, he ran away. So these are people that we think we should celebrate and also point to their work so that those who are interested in reading, we go to those things and find it and read it. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Okay.
Short question. How much of this has to do with you being the incarnation of your grandfather?
That's another opening. That's now you're going to the realm of my memoir, which is done, but it's not published yet, and it will come out one day. Well, it's connected. When they talk about the Agu spirit, that you have to be close to your tradition, to your ancestors, to be able to draw and understand their essence. If you are not close to that, you wouldn't be able to understand the essence. Somebody was asking about what is my spiritual belief, if I have anyone or not. It's all connected. I think anybody who is an African, who is in touch with his Africanness, and we are this generation in transition. There are people who are going forward. There are people who are going back. There are people who are beginning to question, how did we end up here? And I asked this question to Africans, not just Nigerians or anything, Africans, all Black people, Europeans, where they are today. They are going through a transition. They are also confused, but they don't know where to go back to. They don't know like Indians are set, the Chinese, the Japanese, but people who have been playing around with several cultures, and we may be there very soon. When you look at African Americans and we say they don't have connection to their roots, we are moving on that path that we might be there. So it's a transitional period, and people must question, and maybe by questioning we may come up with something new, something better. We may have to transform, but we cannot continue to move head on without thinking about back. Then that goes back to the madman looking back and looking forward. And we have to, with this and this is a generation that once we miss that questioning about things, there may be other generation who may want to do it, but there won't be any reference point. All right. Who was wanting to say something? I just wanted to touch one other question. Somebody was saying how many Rudolphs died during the Biafran war that we lost, in terms of people who can contribute. Everybody, that's why I'm worried. There's something that Peter B used to say, that the society we abuse today will take its revenge on our children. When I see kids at IDP camps, I don't know whether people don't think about that. I keep thinking, this guy might end up coming out of this place. He might end up becoming a governor or army officer. How will he relate to that society, our society? Or you can even say, become Boko Haram, become an armed robber, these are things that we are, as a society, because we didn't care about them, we become at the receiving end of whatever will happen, but based on their lives. But we don't think about that. We don't think about they are begging on the street, they are homeless, they are marginal. We should be concerned. We are not isolated from whatever they will happen to them, whatever they will become. Igbo Basics, welcome.
Yes, I'm going to be a different kind of Agu today. So whatever you see is what it is. And that's because I went to a wedding last night. And that was the wedding of the son of my late friend, Professor C.C. Nwako, who is from Abagana. So his son got married last night, and I was at the wedding, and at that wedding something happened. So that's why you see me the way you see me right now. Anyway, Congratulations, my good brother, Rudolf Okonkwo, even though you are from Nobi and I'm from Ibere. Tex Wariboko. Tex, I asked the question before. Are you related to one Tex Wariboko?
Oh, I'm not. It's Wariboko is a popular Ijaw name, so I'm not related. There are one Tex Wariboko in Texas or something, but we are not related yet.
Okay, that one I've met on a couple of occasions down here in the US. But nonetheless, Dr. Damages, I have not read your book yet. But listening to the conversations from Tex and our good friend Prof Okey Ndibe, I'm highly impressed. And then the panelists have pretty much summarized what's happened so far. I'm coming at it from the perspective of the Agwu, and then your conversations about the madman, looking forward and looking backwards. And then you touched on the what about the war? Somebody had asked you if you knew anything about the war, and you narrated some things about how you were digging in high school. And from the perspective of the madman, there's a man who called Eke Malam, and Eke Malam was during the war. Everybody ran back home, and Eke Malam used to say, every house he sees, he says, you must paint this house, paint it. Everything must be painted. That was from Ibere. That was Eke Malam. And then fast forward to your concept of looking at people in Nigeria as some of the people who, if you give them medication, they become normal. It reminds me of just during the 70s, all this hairstyle that is reigning now. If you fried your hair around that time, for those who were old enough during the period, they will probably catch you in the street and put you on a chain. There used to, in Aba specifically, there used to be people they're marching down the street, and all their hair was like the kind of hair you see now that people will go to the barber shop to get them jaggedy. They make their hair like that. So that was happening. And then dealing on the strength of the Agwu. Okonkwo, you are the Agwu yourself. Agwu is something very, very deep. And when the Agwu has spoken, whatever the Agwu says, if you doubt it, go and challenge the Agwu, and then you find out what will happen to you. So my showing up is just to say thank you for a great work that's been done, a great work that I would take time out to read. In my journeys in life, I have been to your village one time in my life. And that one time in my life, I hope I'll go again and see the difference. And it was in pursuit of Zebi, Chief Zebi, who is from your village, who happens to be your uncle, or your cousin, or your kinsman, whichever way you call it. And that's Chief Zebediah Okorigwe Nwobe, alias 430. And for those who are writers and who have done what Rudolf has done here, I would say that if it took you 40 years to finish a book, then there is something in that book. And most important is when you focus on something and you stay on it, you painted all kinds of pictures. And those are realities. Those are realities. It's like when one engineer, N.D. Uche, wrote about Ophia became home.
Hello, sir. Can you round up, please, so that we can?
Thank you so very much. So my roundup, when I talk about Ophia became home, it was a situation where people ran into the bush and lived in the bush throughout the war. They lived in the bush, and all the animals that lived in the bush came to live in their villages. And I was a part of those experiences. So I am just grateful that people like Rudolf is carrying on the torch. So let the Agwu continue to speak. Let the Agwu continue to speak, because the Agwu will speak the truth and nothing but the truth. And if you don't like what the Agwu has said, you can go and challenge Kamalu if you want to. And whatever happens to you, that's your business. So congratulations, Rudolph, for a job well done and for opening up this particular aspect, the chapter on trying to preview books and stuff like that. I hope that the book of Zebudiah, which is the man and legend of the new masquerade, will be lined up in what you are, the chapter that you have just opened. Because sometimes when you start writing something, just like you've done these poems, the characters that you started talking about, some of them start dying off. Because like in the book of Zebudiah, when we started out the journey, Ovularia was still alive. Ovularia was interviewed in Port Harcourt. She died. And we are hoping that, okay, we'll continue the journey. No problem. We still have one more person who was a major character. And that was Chief Davis Ofo, Claudius Mbojikwe. And a few days ago, Claudius Mbojikwe died. So now we have only one character remaining among the major characters besides Zaki in that particular whole series. And somebody wrote and said, thank God that the man is still alive to be able to not read this as an obituary, but as a reality. So I just want to thank you, and I want to thank Tex, no, not Tex, so Wariboko. I want to thank Tex for a job well done in making this presentation. Please, our audience, pardon me for whatever you see today. Like I explained to you, there is also an agro that is at play here, and that's why I am trying to be as calm as possible. Thank you so much.
Yes.
Congratulations, Rudolph. And
Thank
I
you.
will read that book.
Thank you.
Okay.
Dr. Damages, can I ask you one quick question, if you don't mind? Just one quick.
No, we need to round up. Maybe you can ask.
Maybe in his rounding up, he could just throw that in.
Okay.
Yes. Looking at Igbo cosmology, is there a relationship between Agun and reincarnation? Thank you.
That's a good question. All right, let me round up this way. It's very brief. I thank everybody who bought the book, who read the book, who commented, who is interested in knowing what's in it. I really appreciate that. There's something as scary as writing a book and nobody will read it. And I just want to end with this story. There was one night, Okey called me, maybe around 2 a.m. at night, Okey Ndibe, and he said, I was talking to him, and he said, guess what? I'm being called by Ngugi Wationgo. I said, can you put me on the phone? I want to talk to him. So he connected Ngugi and myself, and we spoke for a long time. And I told Ngugi about the story of my relationship with Kenya, with his book, Whip Not Child. And I told him about ZP. And one of the things that pained me was that Ngugi was not alive to have a copy of the book. I told him about ZP. And then I told him about my pen friend, who is also from Kenya, that I've known for more than 30 years too. So, it's to a certain extent, this was, Ngugi said to me, you have to write this book. You have to tell these stories, especially the story of my pen friend. You have to tell these stories. And I kept thinking, okay, I want this to come out, and I want him to know that he was part of the people that inspired that. But at the same time, I remember the story of Achebe. The only time I interviewed Achebe, he said to me that the story that you have in you, nobody else has the same story. Nobody. I can write a book that will represent the Igbo character, the Igbo people, Okonkwo, but it's not the same story that Tony can write or KJ can write. And he said to me, you have to write, even if you are not very good, even if you are not at the level of the best writer, even if you're writing for your family, your children, your grandchildren, you have to write. If I see a book today, a manuscript written by my grandfather, I'll read it. I want to know what my grandfather is thinking. I want to know what my great-grandfather was thinking. And my dad went to school. So it shouldn't be difficult writing. But it was difficult for him to sit down and write. He was old and he was sick, but I kept encouraging him. I kept encouraging him towards the end of his life. And he wrote. I started getting chapters. I tried to bribe him. I'll pay you. I started getting chapters and we started typing it. When he passed away, I put together the book, the manuscript that he wrote. I called it Onyenkuzi because he was a teacher. The subtitle was something about as himself. He was talking as himself. So it was written in first person. When we got to the funeral, you know the way you do funeral in Nigeria, you have all these things people give out. That book, I had only 100 copies. The people like him, teachers, people who went to school, his age mates, his colleagues, people wanted that more than anything else. And when you open it, he starts talking to you. Till today, I give it to my kids to read, and they've read it, and I'm sure they will give it to their grandchildren, their children, and their grandchildren to read. This is the story of your grandfather. And I wish I had the one for my grandfather, my great-grandfather. It's important that you don't have to write because you want to publish and become rich and big and very important. You write because you're documenting something that will be lost if it's not done. Thank you, everybody. That's why
it's labor of love. It's labor of love.
Thank you. And we've come to the end of the program, so I will sign out. If you want to stay and keep talking to Dr. Rudolf, that is fine, but at least formally we've come to the end of the program. It's about 3 hours and 26 minutes or so of engaging the work from different perspectives, and I thank everybody that have contributed to the success of this program, and for your presence, for your question, for your attention, and for those of you that have bought the books and will buy the books and give it out. I thank everybody. This is the first of the series. Hopefully, we should be able to do more with other writers' books or so. We want to create a forum for people to discuss African writing. Thank you, and go in peace.
Thank you, Nimi. Thank you so much. We're going to end it here, but KJ, we have a follow-up. I know you have questions and other comments that may come in, but the important thing why we have to end it here is that we are going to have students and other people watch this. We don't want to add other extra things to it, so we want to make it brief. 3 hours and a few minutes is enough. So we can go to the next one where we can, throw jabs or anything you want to do. But thank you, everybody. Thank you, KJ. Thank you, Prof.
All right, thank you.
Bobesic. Thank you. And we'll leave it at that, and I'll see you guys. Oh, by the way, next Sunday on 90 Minutes Africa, we are going to have Chido Onoma, Dr. Chido Onoma will join us, the one that has been on assignment. Yeah, he's finally coming to join us. We are going to talk to him next.
I hope he's coming to tender his resignation letter.
He's coming next Sunday. All right.